Are we
Good to go.
working on that?
Can we confirm that they can hear us online?
Tanya or Tierney or anyone out there, can you hear us?
We can.
Yep.
Great.
All right, we're all good. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So we were having some difficulties getting onto our executive session and getting off it, but I hereby attest that the electronic recording reflects the actual contents of the discussion. Actually, that part already was said. The time is now 7:08 and the executive session has been concluded. No formal action was taken. We will not take a recess. We'll go right into the regular meeting now. And with that, we're going to go into our consent agenda. There are 5 items on the consent agenda. If you have any clarifying questions at all, Macy can answer them.
CT, are you here to speak to your appointment?
And I definitely, yeah, welcome any of y'all that are here for that reason too. Right now is a perfect time to step on up and talk. And this is for the folks out there. These are for the folks who are putting in for board appointments. A couple of them are here to speak. Push the little button and a green LED comes on the base and you'll hear your voice echo.
All right, there we go. CT Hutt. I've been a member of Parks Board since I came to town in 2021, and I'm applying for reappointment. Feel we've done a lot of good work in that time. I'd like to see that work continue.
Thanks, CT. Any questions for CT? Tanya or Tierney, you have any questions?
No
CT about it?
questions.
Nope. Thank you.
Okay, just so you know, Trustee Larson isn't here, so if he has questions, he'll ask you another time.
Easy to find.
Oh, there we go. No, I think that, no, whatever you, yeah, he got it. No, I just wanted to say thanks for coming in and being here in person. That's great. Appreciate it.
Happy to.
Something happened to my sound, Mason?
You can still hear me.
Fix his sound, took my. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? They should put me on commercials. Okay. Yes, go for it. Jack. Thanks, Jack. I work for ResNet, so I used to be a lead green raider and a passive house raider too. So yeah. Thank you. Just line of work. Any other clarifying questions or folks online speaking to reappointment? We can go if anyone online, if you, I know I can see at least one up for reappointment. If you have a comment you want to make. See two of you.
I don't
If-
have a comment. Nope.
Okay. If not, any other clarifying questions or anything for Macy?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
So we have I just have something to point out. I think it's fine because it's happening. Rich Orman then will be on two boards, is what I'm seeing. And that is A-okay given the nature of those two boards. Okay.
And
Great.
so Roger Cornell as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of longstanding, and that is a norm that someone from the PC is
Always done.
is with the BZA.
Yep.
And we're glad Roger and Rich are double dutying, and appreciate you all stepping up too. Go ahead with the roll.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Maris,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Trustee Ty,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
and Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is approved.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate that. Well, that we will move into our first action item, which is the interstate parking contract and paid parking plan. And I think Britt, you'll be kicking this off.
Yes. Can you guys hear me on this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is the interstate parking agreement and paid parking plan. As a part of the 2024 budget, town staff recommended contracted with interstate parking for the I'm sorry, I'm having a day with words. Implementation and execution of paid parking for town-owned parking spaces. Prior to engaging with them, the Board of Trustees will need to approve the parking management agreement that is attached. Under this agreement, town gets to decide how paid parking is executed. Based on our prior conversations with the Board of Trustees, interstate parking will be incorporated the following into the town's paid parking plan. Resident passes, which will allow Nederland residents who obtain a pass to park for free in all paid parking spaces. First 15 minutes free for every paid parking spot, which allows people to quickly run in without being charged. Individuals who park in paid parking spots will be charged $2.50 per hour. You can see the new parking calculator. Installations of both kiosks and QR codes. All communication and coordination will go through interstate parking. There will be no enforcement or required program support provided by town staff outside of educating people about how to access Nederland parking website that interstate parking will develop. Under the parking management agreement, interstate parking will begin the trial period from July 1st to September 1st, 2024, which will allow the Board of Trustees to decide if they want to continue with paid parking, and if so, if they want to keep the contract with interstate parking. Over the years, the Board of Trustees and PC have discussed parking throughout town, which include developing paid parking on town-owned lots. It was budgeted for in 2023, but was never implemented because it was identified that the parking needed to be added into the Nederland Municipal Code, including paid parking as a use prior to the town moving forwards. So Ordinance 853 was adopted in December 2023, which allowed for parking spots and paid parking operations in central zoned and certain zone districts. During the strategic planning process, paid parking was identified as a revenue goal during the 2024 budget work sessions. The Board of Trustees did agree to contract with interstate parking and had the goal implemented for paid parking by March 24th. Unfortunately, due to some delays, we did not meet that goal. If the agreement is adopted on June 4th, today, the plan is to have paid parking by this summer. So some financial considerations. This agreement is to cost share, so there's no upfront cost to the town. The town was anticipating implementing paid parking back in March. And so we budgeted 57,500 in revenue. Since paid parking will not likely be implemented until summer, the anticipated revenue is closer to 30,000. If the Board of Trustees wants to continue past the trial period. So some questions before the board. Does the Board of Trustees approve Resolution 2024-33 approving the parking management agreement with Interstate Parking? Let me know if you have any questions.
Do we have anybody from Interstate here?
Yes, let me see. I believe we did. Ew.
This is Tanya. What do you guys think about the 15-minute grace period? Do you think that's long enough?
Yeah, I know we had discussed the possibility of a 30-minute or, something longer before.
I'm worried that people will think they can get it done in 15 minutes and then not, and then end up with a ticket or something.
I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with that. I think 30 minutes is a better window. You can't really do anything in 15 minutes.
Or you could go to get a cup of coffee, or you could have somebody really slow in front of you that orders 20 things, and yeah.
Is there a concern that if it's 30 minutes, then because at 15 minutes you can turn over twice, or you can turn over 4 times in an hour, or twice in a half an hour? Was there a reason for the original for having proposed 15 minutes? That's kind of one of the first immediate things that I think about. Britt Basie, I don't know if.
Say that again. I'm so sorry.
So it was just pointed out that, 15 minutes might be kind of quick to go
Yeah.
in and do your thing. But I wonder if it was purposefully suggested because at 15 minutes, you can turn over 4 times in 1 hour
Yeah.
as opposed to just twice. And so just if there was any data points or information as to why it was set at originally 15 minutes.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I thought someone was supposed to be on from their team, which I was just emailing him. However, that was the initial thought. It's pretty common in other towns as well, in municipalities where it's a 15-minute free roll. I think 30 minutes starts working into that. Yeah, you're kind of taking over that turnover, but it's up to you guys.
Kind of a follow-up to that is, what's the level? 15 minutes is a pretty short span for somebody to be walking around, making sure your car is gone. Right. So I'm guessing the actual, in reality, the 15 minutes is probably longer than that because the chances of somebody
Coming right at that point.
coming by right at 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Pretty unlikely.
Correct.
I mean, you could
Yeah.
almost split the difference if you wanted to and do 20 minutes.
That's what I was going to say. And I feel like it kind of gets people in, gives them a chance to do what they need in case there is something slow, but it also then frees up that parking spot for somebody who wants to park and pay to park. And
Yeah, because I think the original thought process is just if you're realistically parking and running to the deli, you're probably right in front of the deli, most likely,
Okay, gotcha.
depending on the weekday or weekend.
So one of the reasons I was asking, and if you guys can clarify for me, that'd be amazing. But one of the reasons why I was asking if there was somebody from Interstate is that I don't see anything in here in the contract or anywhere else about us being able to access data. In other words, the parking data. And I don't see where we can have some sort of intelligence. How many people, how often are these parking spots filled? How often are they vacant? Is there a seasonality to it? That's really important data that I see us not having any access to. So if anybody is able to clarify that for me, that'd be amazing. If not,
It would seem that they're going to have visibility into it. It's just a matter of what we do.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I can't speak to that. I'm sorry. I was
that's
not
okay.
planning on
And
this.
I will
But I
say,
will say, originally, I imagine that kind of data is available. Obviously, I can't say 100% sure. Can definitely, get that answer if we need to extend this. But we were able to pull all the financial data from Idaho Springs, which is how I originally found this company and we kind of started this process. So I'd imagine this is data they would have, but again, I can't be 100% certain.
Well, financial data is much easier because
Yeah.
that's how they get cost shared out,
Yeah.
right? That's how they know that they get paid. So they're definitely going to be supplying that. But if they're, for us to make better decisions for our municipality in terms of how is it filled, when is it filled, how often is it turning over, that just gives us better insight and how to make decisions long term. So, okay.
I'm sorry.
We could also ask for a contract, just to put a term in the contract related to providing quarterly reports or monthly reports or something like that.
Something, yeah. Because what I'm seeing is very consistently that a lot of municipalities are locked out from their data. It's just the businesses that access it and own it, and that's something I don't want for us. So for me to like feel good about that contract, I'd want a clause or something in there as to what like Jennifer is suggesting. And I did articulate some of the pieces of data, if that's helpful. And maybe they have more, and if they do, that's amazing. But it would just be things like what percentage of the time are folks parking, how often are the slots open, if there is communication between customers and interstate staff. That's kind of important for us to know, like what that might be. What are the violations, right? And then any type of like website information, because from my understanding, those are our people, our visitors, our locals that'll be interacting with the website. Be good information to know.
Any other clarifying questions before we go to public comment?
So in here, like, so our 50% revenue share with them includes the value of any free parking that we offer. So if town residents have free parking, that the value of whatever we offer is included in the 50% revenue share. So there's the potential that we actually don't make very much money on this if a lot of the parking is by town residents who get free parking.
Which is, I think, why the data is also super important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think that's important for us to be aware of, that, that there's, a lot of not hidden cost, but sort of, hidden
Hidden revenue
that
opportunities.
we're sort of splitting an imaginary number with them. So
And I think that's why I do like the probationary period or the trial period for us to kind of whittle through some of that and see what surfaces, and especially during a potentially very busy time for us into summer, into fall. That is cool. I do like that.
Might just jump in really quick. So it does look like there is already a provision in here about records pertaining to gross revenue, including parking tickets, monthly parking records, coupon and validation stamp and sales, cashier reports, daily reports, and deposit slips will be available by the owner for the
So
town.
those are just most of the financial records.
Yes, and then
Yeah.
if there is a complaint record that's required to be provided as well. But maybe not all of the things that you asked for.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's why it seemed like it was mostly the financial stuff, just so that, everyone could get paid equitably, which is great. But I'm interested in some of the other stuff in order for us to make better decisions.
yeah, I think you could construe that that's included in that phrase there, but it definitely would be nice if it was clear.
Agreed.
And can I just clarify something, Luke? Where were you looking at that it says that that kind of free parking is considered in that revenue cost share? Because I'm looking and it looks like it's included in the gross revenue, but we're splitting the net revenue, which I thought didn't include the free parking, but I might be missing something.
Give me a second.
Yeah.
I think if I were to understand the question, maybe I misinterpreted, but came to this conclusion, is that did we assume upfront that there would be a certain percentage of free parking in our revenue projections? I don't necessarily think that we did. But But if somebody has any other information that's contrary to that, like we only assumed maybe 70% capture, maybe that gave 30% leeway for locals and for free parking or whatnot, but I don't recall. And so I think the roll-ups for revenue projections might be off if I were to interpret what you were saying, Luke.
I see.
Yeah, so it's not quite as clear as, and maybe that's probably by intention, but so gross revenue, yeah, includes all the, any value of free parking, but net revenue is gross revenue minus only like the credit card fees, taxes, online sales commissions, so it's not, net revenue
see.
still includes the
Yes.
value of all that
That makes sense.
free parking.
Thanks, Luke.
Any other questions, clarifying questions before we go to public comment?
I have one more. This is Tanya. The enforcement, that's up to our police department or sheriff's, correct?
No.
Or
No, that's, they do the enforcement themselves. That comes with that cost share as well.
so
Yeah,
They have
will
someone here.
literally have somebody in Netherlands
Uh-huh.
all the
Correct.
time, or just sporadically?
That's a great question because I don't think it's actually laid out here.
I mean, during the weekends is probably most important, but
If
There
that's
is-
the case in Idaho Springs, that someone's actually there. But yeah, I don't know how often.
There is a line in there about the sheriff calling the sheriff's department. I didn't see what that was exactly related to, though.
Please.
I'll go look at it again. Okay. But we just want people to think it's being enforced, or we're gonna stop doing it.
Yeah, sorry. I was really planning on somebody from their team being here, so there's some questions I can't answer because it's kind of also strayed away from me. But I'm happy to get those answers if you guys aren't comfortable doing any voting tonight before, get some clarifications, add some more of that information, and then we push this to next meeting as well, if there's more comfortability in that. And we'll have someone on from their team.
Yeah, this says, it's section 8.4. It says interstate will make the call to the police with the exception of between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. when owner will make the call. But I think it's in relation to towing. It says interstate and the owner will agree before towing any vehicle. So but the police don't have to be there to tow
Right.
somebody.
Section 4.1 of their agreement, they say that they will employ at the parking facility a sufficient number of personnel capable of managing and maintaining the parking facility in accordance with the terms and conditions hereof. It doesn't give you an exact number of people, and it doesn't give you how often they will be here.
Any more clarifying questions or statements before we go to public comment? If not, we'll go to public comment. We'll go in the room first, Ron. Is that green light on? We're kind of having a hard time with our,
Okay.
there you go.
I don't know if everyone's aware or not that Eldora's policy for parking is that they charge individuals, but carpools they don't charge. So this year, the problem of having skiers parking in town all day and then leaving was more acute than it has been in the past. I don't know at this point, and correct me and I'll leave, if you're considering abandoning pay parking or not. Is that on the table? Or are you going to go forward with charging for parking?
Right now, I can just read it to you. Right now, the motion would be to approve or deny a resolution which approves parking management agreement with Interstate Parking.
Okay.
So I think right now, what you're hearing is that there's some specific questions on, that
Well,
would be
I just have a comment, and that is if you abandon paid parking, you give me a tremendous advantage because all of those employees who park on the lots free now will park on the streets. There's just no way to force them other than charging to move to allow your customers to park. And the same goes for the hikers, the bikers, the skiers, all the same. They'll park on the city streets because it's free. And I will force everybody into my lots. And I'm saying that just so everybody's aware of what the economics would be. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Are there any public comments from anyone in the room, Jack? Or I don't know. Okay. How about folks online? Any public comments about the paid parking agreement? Okay. Well, that will bring it back to the board for discussion. Brad, if there's any way for you to get those dudes to text back, or better yet, call in, that would be timely.
Trying.
I would be okay with passing this if we raise it to at least 20 minutes for the free parking. And then adding those clauses into the contract and see if they just sign that. The ones about the data. Like, can we just add it in, send it to them, see if they approve it, and then we're good to go?
Yeah, we can ask them if they'll include those provisions.
Is that something that, I mean, could we approve this with those provisions? I mean, do we feel like we can be clear enough about what it is that we're asking to have clarified?
With the following amendment. So if you look at the second option, yeah, you would have to get, whoever makes a motion would have to get specific.
And
Yeah,
and the other
that-
thing is that for the trial period to extend it, you do have to extend it by, I believe you have to extend it by written agreement.
Okay, so it doesn't have to come back to the board?
No, it probably should come back to the board for
Right.
the extending it, because it'll be extended for 1 year. So at the trial period, in August, you'll have another discussion about
Yeah.
what's working, what's not working, and what you would like, and we can include an amendment in the contract at that time too, to ask for data.
Be super interested to have it now.
Well, we could,
Oh,
I'm just saying
okay.
that's a second kind of bite at the apple.
Real quick, another clarifying question to kind of go and, regarding the skiers situation. And I'm sort of just speaking out loud and just asking clarifying question. If folks were to park there like 8 hours a day in one of our slots, I mean, we just charge them for that 8 hours. There's no,
Just gets more expensive, I think. Isn't it an increasing
that's what I want
fee
to
is-
find out.
after a certain number of hours? That's what I remember. It goes up
That-
to a greater amount per hour. That
That's what I'm
was
trying to determine.
What I recall.
But I can't immediately find
Hold on,
that.
I'm looking because I don't believe so. I think it's just the 250 per hour.
I don't think it's set in there, so I don't see why it can't be, the town can't decide that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw something in there that actually said that
Right.
town has the right to change the fee schedule
Yes.
whenever we want.
Mm-hmm. And it's QR code based. So basically in the app, you would just keep re-upping if you didn't like.
Ah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So they could be
there's
at
kiosks
Eldora.
that- Yeah,
Yeah.
QR code, but you get like a reminder on your phone that's like 10 minutes until it expires if you didn't do like an all day.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
So I guess that is a little bit of a discussion item of whether or not we want to have a graduated increase or, and maybe we don't need to have it for the trial period. But that's why also the data is like super important. So if we can get an understanding of how many people are, parking for 8 hours or 6 hours plus, right? That gives us sort of the insight to know, do we need to go to a graduated schedule or not?
Do you feel like you can clarify that enough to put it as an amendment?
Possibly. Seems really hard right now. I think so. But so what we're saying is the 20 minutes, 20-minute time or free parking, right?
Just
First
to-
20 minutes free?
Tanya, are you content with 20 minutes? I mean, personally, I like the 30 still, but
I could be swayed either way. I see the logic with 20, 30 is fine with me. If we could, I mean, can we poll everybody and see what everybody's thinking?
Yeah, let's do that quick.
I'd be up for 20 trial period.
I'm good on 20.
Yeah, I mean, especially assuming town residents are free. I mean, 20
Please. Yeah.
20 minutes for tourists, it seems plenty.
Right. Yeah. Because remember, this isn't locals. This is.
So you guys are 20, I'm 30.
Yeah, except that, like Town and Ed, Rollinsville's local, they come in. Ridge Road's local, they come in, but they're not
Sure.
gonna get free parking, but yeah. But yeah, I'm fine either way.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, but Tierney, where do you sit for a time?
I would sit on 20.
Okay. So you just brought up a great idea.
Yeah.
How do we define locals? 'Cause
Well,
personally,
We can choose to give out free parking to whoever we want.
Right. I was going to say, can we have like a special application? Like, if someone lives in Rollinsville, but they're here in that majority of the day or what have you? Could we,
or if they just live in Rollinsville.
Yeah,
or if they just,
You mean they pay double?
applications.
Or ward. I mean, yeah, it's, okay. I mean, if we have,
This is gonna get hairy.
yeah, it's gonna get subjective unless
Yeah,
I mean, we could
maybe the
tie it
library
to
district? What is that, a
library
bigger
district,
district?
and I don't know that does that go to Rollins?
Can somebody
No, it
clarify
doesn't,
what the
but still
library
it's
district
bigger.
covers?
Yeah, it doesn't go to Rollinsville.
I think it,
No, the library district goes to Kelly Dahl, or just
Okay.
before Kelly Dahl, and then it goes up north towards Sugarloaf Road.
Mhm.
Follows very similar lines as the fire district. if
okay,
anyone-
so the fire districts, no, they're about the same size.
Yeah, about the same size.
I'd be
And
okay
when
with
we talked about this in the past, when we discussed the paid parking in the past, we did discuss aligning it with the Eco Pass. And so whoever gets, if you're in the Eco Pass, district, I guess you could say, which is basically town limits. I would argue that people coming from Rollinsville, Ward, Gilpin County, they probably know where to park. That's not paid parking. So I don't know that that is going to be much of an issue. And if somebody really had a problem with it, I'll bet you they could come to town staff town hall and we could probably work something out.
Does that by default include people in Ridge Road and Cold Springs? Or no? Yeah, it does. Okay.
Yes, it does.
And Magnolia to, like, how far out Magnolia does that go?
I don't think.
I'm not sure how far down Magnolia the district goes. Lays easy, 90 or County Road 97, right around in there.
Wait, for the Eco Pass or for the library,
District.
for the district, for the fire/library district?
The Eco
Yeah.
Pass is Netherland.
Is town
Address.
only. Yeah,
So Ridge Road has a Netherland address.
right.
So I think some of Magnolia has a Netherland.
They have a Nederland
Yeah,
address.
I think that's a fair thing. Like if you have a Netherland address, that you counts, I'm down with that.
Yeah, I guess I also like the idea of flexibility for someone to go into town staff and say, hey, I live in Ward, or I'm here all the time, or I live in Rollinsville. Just, reasonable. That's I know it's subjective, but that's my take on it.
But I mean, that stuff is still totally at our discretion at any point, right? Like we don't have to make that decision right now as part of the agreement.
Okay.
So what
Is
were we
the
saying,
agreement
Eco
gonna ask
Pass or
us-
library district?
I'd say the largest district personally, but why is
I-
it that you? I mean, I like the library district more than the Eco Pass because Eco
Me
Pass
too,
is really
me
town.
too.
So
Eco
whatever
Pass.
district, be it fire district or library district, largest would be my choice.
Agreed. I think we could do this for now and then the trial period. When does that expire? I'm sorry, it's probably in the aim.
September 1st.
Yeah.
So that we can
September
reevaluate with the feedback we're getting, which I'm sure there'll be a lot of angry people, and we'll see how much money we're bringing in and determine how we could expand it to Rollinsville to Ward. I mean, that's just a hard one because then you're like, how far east do you go? Like it gets complicated. But I like the sentiment of it. So I think we should stick with the library or EcoPass, whichever, not library or fire, whichever one's bigger, and then reevaluate in September.
Because that would rope in the town of Eldora too, right? Fire district definitely ropes in the town.
Fire district does, yes.
Then let's do fire district. That's my thought. Well, obviously everyone's opinion.
Sure.
So as far as actual amendments to this, if we're going to approve it, we've got the data question.
Mhm.
We've got law enforcement question or no? Sheriff, police department, like what's
Maybe hours of what their hours are gonna look like operational wise.
Yeah, I mean,
And the call to the law enforcement.
well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. So I mean, so it does say in here that they agree to operate at 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So if that's their agreement, then that means there's somebody always here.
And they'll staff based on what data ends up looking like.
Yeah. But to me, I have a question about what do they mean by, calling the police? Like what does that mean? Given our
Yeah, it
situation.
states for towing, but we have to agree as owners with them that a vehicle to be towed. And
Right.
typically that expense ends up falling on them. Yeah,
vehicle
so
owner.
it's not.
Yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering why we, if we need to change police to sheriff's department or something like that, or,
Mm.
what's
Can you just direct me to the page that's not the next one?
page 32, section 8.4.
Thank you.
But so what, I mean, just to get back to amendments, so what other?
Within the 20-minute.
Yeah, 20 minutes
Is
data.
20 minutes even in there? I think it's one of those.
No,
I'm looking at-
you're right. We're adding some amendments. So 20
Well,
minutes.
but I think the free period actually is still probably in our
The aim.
agreement, but like we can change that whenever we want. Like that's stuff
I
that's
don't think
always.
it's in the actual management agreement that we're looking at. Like I'm looking at 6.2 and it doesn't specify. I think we specify that later.
No, it's not specified in the specific agreement.
Yeah.
If that's direction to town staff as to how you want to implement it, that's
Yeah.
fine, but you don't need to amend the agreement.
Yeah, okay. So really our main amendment to the agreement here is around the data and potentially something about law enforcement if.
Yeah, we could just say, I mean, you mean just changing the word police to Boulder County Sheriff's Office?
Well, and what does that even mean? I mean, do they have to call the sheriff if they're going to tow a vehicle?
We'll
Well,
make the call, Interstate will make the call to the police with the exception of between 6 and 8 when the owner will make the call.
Right. So I mean, what does that impact on our, our reliance on the sheriff's department if they have to call every time they're going to tow somebody? Is that,
But I think there's
Well,
also,
we have to agree. So it
Yeah.
says interstate and the owner will agree before towing any vehicle.
Right, but
But
I'm just
instead of
saying-
us calling, they have
Yeah.
to call.
but I'm just saying like, so yes, we agree we're going to tow a vehicle, but
Mhm.
like, does that mean that they have to call the sheriff or do they just call the tow company and get the vehicle towed?
You-
That's where I'm
They-
like, I'm just not clear.
It's town property, so
Yeah.
town can make the decision of
Yeah.
who to call for towing.
Okay, so it's not like
No.
we have an agreement to call the sheriff.
Right.
and every time we
No.
call, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
As long as that's not the case, that we don't have to call the sheriff every time we tow a vehicle, then I'm okay with it.
I move to approve resolution 2024-33, approving the parking management agreement with Interstate Parking with the following amendments. That there be a provision added regarding the ability for Nederland to capture data. Things such as how long are folks parking in the spaces? How often are the parking spaces vacant? Where are people coming from who are visiting? Communication between customers and interstate staff. If there are violations or if there's website information that could be helpful to us in making future town decisions. I can also work offline with somebody, whoever's working on that paragraph. Because I might think as, like a couple of other corollary things that would be the provision of data I just wanted in there.
Is that okay to work offline when we're voting on?
If the general idea is data sharing and that's understood by the Board of Trustees, I think the motion is clear enough.
Do I have a
Other-
second?
Other amendments? Second.
Yes, we have the amendment for the 20 minutes and we have the amendment to make it be
Uh,
the fire.
The 20 minutes in the fire district is all stuff we can, is at our own discretion at any time. It's not part of the agreement.
Yeah, that's what we direct town staff to do. We're not putting that in the contract.
Oh, gotcha. But okay, how do we, is that a different aim or a different motion then to direct them that?
Yeah, we would just give a nod of forward or direct them to do so.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay.
That's okay.
So yes, for me.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay. Mayor Billy,
No, I remain opposed to paid parking,
To pay parking in general.
and I will continue to.
all right. Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
Trustee Ty,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Trustee Maris.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion was approved.
Thanks, everyone. The motion is approved. It passes. And we'll go on to our first discussion of the night, the short-term rental ordinance.
So have we given then the nod of four for them to make
Oh.
those changes to make sure that happens?
Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. Yeah, so do we agree to 20 minutes as the free, 20 minutes up front free? And that was it.
Fire district.
And yeah, and to open up the fire district would be the boundaries for which people could apply for the free parking pass, for a locals parking pass.
Okay.
Are we cool?
No.
Yeah. Nod?
Yes, nod.
Nod.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks all. You have guidance you need, Brett?
Yes, again, sorry about the mishap.
No problem at all. No worries. So with that, we'll go to the short-term rental ordinance. And I think that's Britt as well, right?
That would be me.
Oh, Macy. Okay, I'm sorry.
Britt
Yeah.
will Jump in.
No, I knew that. Sorry.
She was on the subcommittee with us for the short-term rental code amendments. So she may have input. But so far this evening, the last time we talked about this was recently. But the first time we talked about it was in August 2023, when we talked about changes that were needed. We focused on some of the challenges town staff were navigating with regards to things like the two primary license types, the board's desire to explore capping licenses, community feedback that short-term rentals should have fire bans and bear-proof trash cans, as well as ways to communicate directly with short-term rental owners. So the subcommittee worked for the past few months, and we developed the following goals. They are to limit the number of housing stock converted to short-term rentals. We want to ensure that short-term rentals are operating in a very safe manner and are respectful of the neighborhood in which they operate. We hope to provide a means for neighbors to work with short-term rental owners on their concerns and improve that line of communication. And we hope to simplify the administration of license process for efficient town use of town staff time. So when we went through everything with the subcommittee and then presented to the planning commission, it is town staff's recommendation, as well as the planning commission's, that we move forward with option one, which is one license type. However, since our last meeting with the Board of Trustees, we have included that the Class C license is retained with the one license type. So it's one general short-term rental license, and then a Class C license is available as well. The Class C license will not affect the cap, but pretty much has the same requirements as the other licensing structure, unless you guys wanted to amend that. The second option for licensing structure before you is option two, which was requested by you at the last meeting. So what this license structure would do would allow a property owner to short-term rent a single bedroom in their primary residence while they are generally present in the home. So again, it should be noted that town staff does not recommend moving forward with this licensing structure as it does not meet the established goals identified as reasons to amend the licensing schedule, specifically goal number 1 and goal number 4. Also, this option closely mirrors the current licensing structure, which includes 2 primary license types and was identified as a main contributor to challenges faced by town staff. So then outlined here in the table is how that would be regulated. You would have a whole home rental, which includes ADUs, detached or attached. And then you would have a partial home rental option, which would give somebody the option to obtain a license to rent 1 bedroom out of their home. And then you have the Class C retained there as well. So again, the recommendation from town staff and the planning commission is the adoption of option number 1, which is 1 license type. And do you have any questions? The questions So sorry, let me back up and mention an important note here. That because the moratorium on short-term rentals expires on August 6th, it is recommended that the board approve the short-term rental ordinance no later than July 2nd, which means we would have 1 more regular meeting before that, so that the ordinance can be effective before August 6th. So my questions for you are, do you have any questions about the proposed short-term rental code amendments? Do you want to see any changes to the ordinances, and which licensing structure do you wish to adopt? And let me know if you have questions.
This is Tanya. I have a question for everybody. With Class C, which is commercial properties, do we all feel like it's necessary to be a primary resident? To be when you own a commercial property in Nederland and you wanted a short-term rental that to me that doesn't seem necessary for just the commercial properties. That's seems like that's the nature of commercial properties, that you don't have to be there to run it. It's not a house, it may be a house, but it's in a commercial zone. So that's my question to everybody, how they feel about removing the primary resident check on the C class.
Because, well, right now it's non-primary resident in our existing code.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Class C.
Yeah. It's commercial properties. People fib this stuff up anyway all day long, and they'll continue to do so. But I feel like for Class C, we shouldn't even make them come up with a lie. It's a commercial property. That's the nature of commercial. They pay commercial property taxes for the most part. I don't know if all of them do.
Macy, you didn't change it to be primary owner?
I did change it. That was a request from the board at the last meeting, was that you wanted to retain the primary licensing requirement across all license types. So I kept it for Class C.
But yeah,
But
maybe everybody else.
Tanya is correct. Right now, the Class C license, you are not required to be a primary, it doesn't have to be your primary resident for you to operate it as a short-term rental.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to poll everybody and see how they felt about that check.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it being a non-primary resident. I have other issues with Class C, but I'll bring those up later.
Oh, cool.
No opposition.
Can't hear you.
No opposition.
Okay, Luke?
Is the only requirement for Class C that it's in a commercial zone, commercial area? Is that the only?
Neighborhood commercial.
No,
or
not
CBD?
neighborhood commercial, not neighborhood commercial. They're not included. Am I right? It's just
general.
commercial.
Correct. General commercial, central business district, and industrial zones.
Yeah.
If the home is located within those zones, it falls into the Class C license category.
And there's no other requirement for that.
That's correct. It's just the zoning.
And just to clarify again, you said commercial.
Central Business District, General Commercial, and Industrial Zones.
Yeah, okay, that's, yeah, sorry, I misspoke, not neighborhood commercial, general commercial.
Danny?
Sorry, I was just taking notes. I agree with Tanya. I don't think that it needs to be a primary residence.
Luke?
I'm thinking about it.
Okay, I agree. I don't think it needs to be in those specific zones.
Is there a cap on the number of commercial licenses a single person can have?
For a
Yeah.
single person, yes, because a person can only obtain one license of any type.
Okay, so,
So they are limited to
and
one
that,
short-term
and that
rental
is
license.
actual person, not like I have an LLC.
Person, yes. If Jennifer Madsen can help me with the definition of person.
Person includes corporation, it includes individual, it's the owner of the property.
Okay, so it can't be like I have 4 LLCs and I can rent 4 properties because each property is owned by a separate LLC.
We're not really looking into records of corporate structure. So if you have 115 First Street LLC, and then you're also an owner in Class C LLC, each of those can have one STR license. So we don't
Even if
look at
they're owned by the same
underlying
person?
ownership.
Even if they're owned by the same person, because I know that's a common thing for STRs. They have, you have it owned by an LLC, not by a person. And so that seems that we're sort of missing the point if
Well,
having a.
so one of
Yeah.
we talked about this in the past, and one concern that I have is, and maybe Macy can touch base with this, is that's difficult. Like, how do you administrate your town clerk look at corporate documents and make a decision, okay, this person owns this percentage, and so then they can't have another license. I mean, the ownership could be divided in such a way that it seems like an administrative
Well,
nightmare.
it seems to me that the commercial property needs to be under the name of a person or a corporation. And so that corporation should probably show documents of who's in the corporation, and it could be checked.
Yeah, I mean, I would support that the actual STR license has to be in the name of a person, not in the name of an LLC.
I've
just-
been asking for that the whole time. Yeah.
Is that legal?
I don't know, is that legal?
Well,
Yeah.
you're
Discriminating.
discriminating against corporate ownership forms.
Well, but it
So
doesn't,
what is
even
the
if it,
reason
even
for
if
that?
even if the house, even if the property is owned by an LLC, like the license could still be filled out by an actual person.
Right, but
Who
at that
is-
point,
Who is who?
but at that point, the LLC is just going to turn to the other partner, hey, you already own one in the town, so why don't you go apply? And they get around it.
And so
That's
I've
the
had
problem
that
with
happen
corporations.
specifically with a corporation in Big Springs. The first gentleman applied and he applied under his name. And I gave him the license under his name. And then his partner purchased a home and applied for a license under the corporation name. And then once complaints started coming in and we started looking into ownership structure of the homes and the corporation, the gentleman converted the home ownership from the LLC to his personal name. So the physical property ownership matches the licensure of the gentleman.
So that's what we want.
So just clarifying, does person count as spouse? Like, I think this is coming before, I don't remember what we said, but
It doesn't have to. 100% does not have to.
Okay.
An LLC can be formed around any number of partners as a legal structure.
cool.
Yeah, but who owns the LLC? There's usually a list of them. And of
In
the
this
owners.
Yeah.
circumstance, they both did.
Yeah,
Well,
and
then it's not that hard. I know, Macy, it's easy for me to say because you're the one doing the work. So forgive me for saying this. To request at the application that a corporation must submit the list of the owner of the corporation when they send in the application. And so then you or somebody can just go through the list and make sure there's not duplicates of names showing up, even if they're just a minor partner, and then it's a duplicate. And I think that's sort of should be included in the application. If you're applying as a corporation, you have to give us your corporation documents that show the owners of it. It just seems to be the only way to make sure that people don't try to circumvent the one per person.
Yeah, agreed.
And I realize that it's more work for you. I understand that, but that's why we're charging that fee, that you're spending 25% of your time working on SDRs and the people are paying for it now. So, but yeah, I know it's easy for me to say, but it just should be a requirement. And then, if we start getting complaints or we get suspicious, we go through, we look at it, make sure there's no duplicates. Doesn't matter if you're a 5% owner of it, you can't do it then. I don't know how we add that into the code, but.
Jennifer, is there any concern with even taking a look at a list of potential owners and if there's duplicates of denying them an STR license?
No, no, I'm trying to think of how it's drafted. I mean,
Right.
it gets complicated.
Very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it sounds like what Trustee Corvalon is requesting is if, even a small minority percentage owner has another STR license, then the LLC would be denied that license.
So see, what I could see folks doing too is, okay, well, you're a minority partner in this LLC, you already own an STR license. They'll just spin up another LLC and not include that person, but then add them later.
Yeah, but we have to
So-
resubmit stuff every year, don't we? Or every 6
Yeah,
months?
I
Are
mean,
we
there's-
asking for it now?
But then, I mean, I guess so if they spin up another LLC, add them later, and then they come back for reapplication and we see that there's a duplicate, that this one person has 2 STRs, we'll revoke that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we're asking. Are we asking for primary residence documentations to show up at least once a year or every 6 months or something? Because people would just say their primary residence and show documentation and then get that app and then change their residency. I
Right,
thought we
makes-
were going to do that too, like make them
Yeah.
at least show it every year.
Yeah, Macy, we're asking for, oh, hold on, we have,
Is that true? Or because wasn't it the case that they just showed it once and it was one and done? But
Yeah,
we discussed that
Tanya-
every year they do it.
yeah, sorry, we have a technical thing we're
Oh,
trying
I'm
to work through
sorry.
real quick.
Okay.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're all clear.
Yes, it is part of their renewal application that they need to submit documentation showing their primary residence, their official town of Nederland address, and
Thank you.
forms of ID, including on renewal.
I mean, yeah, anybody who's dead set on cheating us can figure out a way to do it. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
But hopefully people aren't for the most part.
Yeah.
trying to do so.
I mean, the goal is to make it enough of a pain in the ass that discourage people from doing that.
Exactly.
But,
Just
but do
enough
we
of
want
a
to make
pain.
it enough of a pain of it, like a huge pain in the ass for us? I think it sounds like a huge administrative burden going through business documents and corporate documents like this, corporations that can be owned by other corporations. And I know that this isn't probably a huge problem in Nederland, but it seems like that would be doing a lot of footwork for something that people could easily get around if they wanted to. I don't know if Attorney Madison can talk a little bit more about what these kinds of documents could look like that would require Macy to go through them, and how much of a burden that would be. I mean, if she's already spending so much time issuing these licenses, this seems like a lot of extra work.
I mean, that's what I think. It's hard to say exactly what type of documentation is going to be given. But I can imagine that there will be circumstances where Macy will have to reach out to me and I'll need to interpret those documents. And, you know, it seems like a headache, and I wonder if it really is a concern. It sounds like there was one issue, but I don't know that it's a really, with the cap, there's going to be a limit on the number of STRs anyways.
But I could see that being an issue, like, you know, people saying, oh, well, this one guy or this one group of people is hogging all the licenses because they're applying under different names and getting, like, I mean, a lot of this is to keep it fair for people under the cap. It means you can only have one. And so that you don't have small groups controlling the whole market.
How many, I mean, so this kind of started with the question of whether Class C is primary residence or not. And then we evolved it, it grew into like, corporations, and then they get on one property in one class, one in another. First of all, how many Class C licenses are there?
That's gonna be the same. I can look that up for you if you give me 1 second.
Less than 10,
I think it was 12.
70. Okay. Okay. Yeah, if you would.
And if it's possible to break them down per their actual zone, do you have that information on there? So it's not easily accessible? Okay.
Well, I guess at this moment, there's two questions. One is the original one. Do we want to keep the P for C? And then the other one is, how do we want to deal with corporations? Because that's not just related to commercial properties, that's all across the board. So
Yeah, that's
I
my
guess
other thing.
let's stick with the first one and then go to the second one and then recircle, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know.
You want to stick with the primary residence for Class C?
Yeah, I know Luke
First-
brought up because of the fact that probably most likely all commercial properties are under a corporation name, but probably maybe not all of them are, but so I think that's where it got into that. And so it's not that it's not related, but they're separate but related. So.
But okay, so does a corporate ownership in a commercial space, commercial zone, Class C, does that, because Tanya, you were the first to go with this, about taking away the primary residence.
Yeah, I'm fine with taking away the P for that. But then I am more willing to be a little tougher on the corporation ideas that we were bringing up. But I feel like that's two conversations.
Can I ask a question? Are you thinking of implementing a cap for Class C license? Because
No,
if you don't have a cap for Class C, what do you care?
The P means they have to be primary residents, and a lot of people who own commercial property don't live in town or.
But
Right, but then you're basically saying they can't have STRs. Is that what you're?
No, you guys are
Okay,
saying that. If we have the primary residence in a commercial property requirement, then people who, it brings to mind the case of Rhea Roble, who
Right.
has the office in the house, has an apartment underneath that's long-term, and then has the upper house that she rents out as a short-term rental, but she lives in Rollinsville. It's
Right,
not,
and
she
that's
has an
where-
office there, but I don't think that counts as primary residence. So,
So that would mean she's no longer eligible.
she would be no longer allowed to do and that's fine if that's our intention. And I don't know if she's the only one in that situation who owns commercial property. And it seems like commercial property should allow more flexibility. And same with being in the central business district. The industrial we added just for that one person. So, I mean, if we're making that giant allowance, we allowed industrial for the one person who was upset. I see that these are different zones than a residential area, primary, and that there's no reason to be so strict about it.
All right, well then don't bend on that one. Let's talk
Like
about.
uncheck the P,
Yeah, turning it into a no on that one.
But I think everyone was in agreement with Tanya that
Well,
it
Luke
should.
was on the fence.
Except Luke, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
except
then we started talking about and I know we don't have to be unanimous, but wanted to circle it back and see if we all kind of agree, or most of us agree to just, if
Should we
I
see
made a
the
friendly
discussion?
amendment in the motion.
It,
to
it
remove
sounds
that.
it sounds like 6 of us agree there should be a no in that box that says primary residence for Class C.
Okay, cool.
And
Now,
that's what we
and
should
now
do.
we can talk about what to do about corporations. It is
So
complicated.
I do want to say something about corporations. So there's people that complain, no offense, and they want to see, okay, so part of these rules to keep honest people honest, okay? And if there are some people in town who are honest with their STRs, or relatively at least, and they want to, if they're paying these extra fees, they want to know that the town clerk is doing the work. And frankly, I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with you digging into who owns corporations and stuff like that. I think that's reasonable, personally.
Same
This
here,
is-
Billy. If we're charging for 10 hours a week,
That's,
then I feel like, yeah.
And I think we could, on applications, we can ask them just to include their, articles of organization. I mean, most of these are going to be LLCs. We're not going to have like weird multi-nested things for the most part. And so you can have just be like, okay, here's my articles of organization and list the owners of of that LLC, and it should be pretty straightforward. You put the burden on the applicant to submit the
yeah,
paperwork.
I like
so then
that.
Putting the burden on Macy to go look it up.
Well, right, maybe put some in the application where it requires the applicant to do more of that, providing the information up front so that the research time comes down.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty standard thing for an LLC is to have your articles of organization. I mean, that's just how it works.
Yeah,
We
it's
could
not hard
also,
to have.
we could also ask a question on the application. Do you or a minority owner in the LLC already have an owning interest in another property that is short-term rented?
Yes.
That's good. Add that on there as well, in addition
Because that
to.
keeps honest people honest.
So are you guys in agreement with them providing the documentation? Because speaking from someone who used to look up
Yep, well-
business organizations, it is a lot of work.
Yeah,
but-
no, I would say we would make it a requirement,
Yeah, just they submit it. It's that easy. You come in with your folder with all your stuff.
So are you asking that I just put
We'll get there.
that on the
We're
application,
not
like
done yet, Tom.
as an LLC, if you're applying as an LLC? Because, okay,
I can add it to the ordinance. I think then we also need direction as to, so that means then that a minority owner or any owner of a corporate entity cannot have an STR license. Okay.
Which is already sort of encompassed in
Yeah.
that line, right? When we say no person.
It is, but I think it needs to also be further delineated to say that somebody with ownership interest in an entity cannot have a separate license.
A separate short-term license. Yeah. Long-term license go out the,
We don't have any long.
We love
right. But I mean,
No
those-
limit, no
we,
caps.
we want that, right?
Yeah.
So this is to limit the short-term rent.
Yeah. We'll go to public comment here in a bit. But any questions clarifying questions on the difference between the two options? Because that's our next real thing. Because just to remind ourselves that on April 16th, we were pretty interested in option 2.
Yep.
I did submit some questions that Macy was able to clarify for me. One of the questions that I had was, okay, so we're letting go of the multiple licenses if we were to go with option 1. And so my question was, if there's a non-primary owner of a short-term rental, we've typically capped that in our current code that they can only short-term rental that property for 45 days. And so I asked, with the single license, what's the maximum number of days that can be rented? And it's 365 days a year. And Macy, you said that there were some reasons for that.
Well,
Um,
wait, you have to be a primary resident. That's the checkbox there.
Yeah, for the general short-term rental, yes, you do. So they prove their residency, they go through the licensing process, they pay taxes quarterly, they host guests in their home who contribute to our local businesses and our economy. And from a administration standpoint, tracking them is extremely difficult. I cannot get an accurate picture of days rented until their taxes are submitted, which happens 3 months after the rental actually occurs. So I can't get a picture of the whole year until the year is completed in March of the following year. So I can't track days rented. What I can track is documented stays, and that's why we went over and we're requiring a minimum amount of 4 documented stays. Yeah, that's really what I have to say about that.
Right. And so the clarification is that there are no more non-primary, except if we change Class C. With option 1, there would be no non-primary residents.
Yes, and then you'd have your Class B that are currently held, that have been grandfathered in for the past few years.
Mhm.
They will continue to be grandfathered and operate as a non-primary, but they will be opened up just like the rest of the people to rent 365.
Okay, hold on, just so we're all clear on that. So moving forward, if we were to go with option 1, there is no non-primary resident ST available,
Yes,
except previous Class Bs.
who have held since, I don't know when it says in the ordinance, since they've held. So right now we have 6 Class B licenses held by very responsible operators. I've never received a complaint on a Class B license.
However, they will go from being able to rent out for 45 days to 365 days. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want everyone to be clear on that.
Thank you.
How do we feel? Yeah, and I mean, how do we feel about the impact of that?
Yeah, I think that's something to clarify. Or now that it's been clarified, now it's something to discuss potentially.
Well, if they're capped and if they're grandfathered in, and if there's a few of them and they've been doing a good job,
And as I said, I've never been able to enforce the days rented requirement in the last 3 years.
So we don't even know if they've been over 45 days or not.
No.
They've
Mhm.
only paid for 45 days probably with the fees. Another kind of related question. How can we have a primary resident who rents 365 anyway? Isn't there a requirement for primary residents that they live here 6 months out of the year?
Well,
Yeah.
that was the whole thing with the Class Bs, is like that they're non-primary residents, so they can do 365. Anybody who's Class A primary resident is only 45 days.
No.
No.
Class B, non-primary residents. Class B,
just-
non-primary resident was for 45 days.
they were the most
in the
limited
past.
on number of days, but we're unable to enforce it.
Right. Okay. So,
And the more I mean, we're getting confused just talking about the license types. The more complex we make the regulations for each license type, it's harder for me to enforce. It's harder for my compliance software to support me in my complex regulations. And it's harder for the applicants to follow the rules. And it's harder for me to enforce and to keep track of this one should be doing this, but this one's allowed to do this and that one's allowed to do that. And then we get into the problem which first sparked all of these revisions of the regulations, which is this person applied for this, but they don't actually fit in the box. But this box is more enticing because of XYZ, because we made the regulations different. So they want to apply for that and fit there. So the more we start doing that, we're just going back to the problems that I brought to you in August of 2023.
Yeah, perhaps, but I mean, we had more options then.
Well, so I just also want to just mention something about your recommendation to allow somebody to rent 1 bedroom out of their home. Currently, no license holder does that. It's not been something that has been applied for. or is held that I am managing, nobody has a bedroom that they rent out of their home, out of my
We know that
56
people do. And
licenses.
I
But
thought it
not
was pretty clear
according
to
to the
you.
tracker and to their listings, who is licensed. I do not have a single person who just rents one bedroom as using that as a license. And then again, if you want someone to get a license to rent one bedroom out of their home, then they must have that as a separate listing. So if they wanted to then obtain a license, if they wanted to then put another bedroom on the listing, they would need another license for that one bedroom.
But
They
they
would
can-
need two separate
I
listings.
thought it was only one bedroom per house. They can only do one bedroom per house. They can't have two bedrooms.
I mean, yeah, but like.
But
we
just so
make the
is,
rules And somebody goes and puts their second bedroom on there and.
but is part of the, I
But
think,
you, but that's the same address. I mean, you should be able to catch that.
and the other thing is too, is I think perhaps they haven't applied for the license and we don't have record keeping because there was no license to apply for. What
Yes, they
like,
can apply for a short-term rental license as a primary resident in their primary home, host present.
and so that would have
And
been
they can
just
rent
for
for
one,
$365.
and so that would have just been for one bedroom.
Yeah.
But I think, I believe that's what they're doing. And so what you're saying is, if I'm hearing it correctly, they would just do it as a STR or for, as a, what you're suggesting is the general STR.
Yeah.
So is there any advantage to having besides tracking and understanding that that could be created more, of just general, paperwork or whatnot? I think one of the reasons to split it out was awareness. And Tanya or Trustee Corvalon, you could kind of elucidate a little bit more because I think this was your recommendation to track and have the bedroom rentals.
Oh, well,
But
we're not,
why-
yeah. Why was, I guess nobody's doing it. I thought that it was a opportunity for people who are struggling financially to make a little money off their spare bedroom if they were so inclined. And we're going to hit that cap pretty quickly. And so then that won't be an
Right.
option for people. That was the reason. But if nobody's doing it, I mean.
Well, but the thing is,
But
if Macy,
people
if
are
I,
doing it.
well, hold on, but if Macy, if I understand you correctly, why couldn't they apply for the general STR for their bedroom?
Absolutely.
Oh, they
Okay,
could.
And
so-
that-
I was
and
just
that
thinking
was-
that the cap's going to get hit and then that option.
Okay.
Yes, and so then they're gonna be, and then if they don't fit in the box of one bedroom, they're going to apply for the one bedroom license and potentially end up renting more than one bedroom on their listing. Because they
Anyway,
made it
right.
enticing.
So we might have to consider potentially raising the cap if we have just a general STR license that can encompass and just envelop the one bedroom scenarios. I'm not seeing too many problems potentially with that, but we would need to reconsider our cap. And Macy, for everyone's memory's sake, we are currently at 52 STRs. Is that correct? Or is that wrong?
Counting Class C.
Yeah, counting all of them.
I think we were around 56, but I've had at least 2 or 3 relinquished licensure throughout this.
Okay.
So I want to say we were at 52 the
Okay.
last time I.
For some reason, that number sounds right to me too.
So was our main concern the last time we talked about this? I'm sorry, I'm struggling to remember that whole conversation. Like we basically saying we want to stick with one, but we wanted two. And was it the main reason we had a problem with one was because of the one room rental?
What I'm coming to the understanding is maybe there was a misunderstanding that if there was the whole house or the general STR that they couldn't rent out a bedroom.
Right.
And from what I'm understanding now, this is correct. This isn't you can indeed pull a general STR and
Absolutely.
you will be
So
able to rent your one
what
bedroom.
license they would have pulled, if anybody were to have pulled this in the last 3 years, they would have applied for a primary resident, host present,
Class A.
allowed to rent for $365. No, it was primary resident, host present, primary resident, host not present, Class A, Class B, Class C.
Okay, gotcha.
So
Sorry.
if it's a bedroom in their home, you can assume that they're generally present when the guests are. But then we get back to, we can't actually prove or know if
Right.
anybody is present when the guests are there.
So as long as folks are fine with the understanding that, you, folks who want to rent out their bedroom can still do it under general STR. I think we're covered there. Again, I would consider maybe us thinking about that cap number. So that was one clarification question I had sent to Maisie.
Are the fees the same?
For the license types?
Yeah. So
Yes.
say someone has one bedroom, they're paying as much as someone renting a whole house?
Yes, but the regulatory fee is based on bedrooms. So if somebody's renting a house with 6 bedrooms, they're going to pay 6 times 145. If they're renting 1 bedroom, they're only going to pay 145.
And so the only thing, like you said, going back to what you can or cannot track, we don't know if they actually increase the number of bedrooms.
I have no.
Right.
Yeah.
So they could, what's going to prevent somebody, just hypothetical, what's going to prevent somebody from doing a whole house, but only saying, or a general STR, general STR, but only saying they have 1 bedroom?
I think we're gonna
I
have to
think it's
charge
the
based on the
other-
bedrooms of the house.
Got to.
Wait, can you repeat that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So let's think through this hypothetical, okay? Let's say general STR, we've only got 1 license. Let's not even think about Class C right now. Don't even think about it. Okay, general STR. I come to you and I say, I'm going to apply for a general STR license. Got a 1-bedroom house.
Right.
I'm only going to rent out 1 bedroom,
Yeah.
but they could easily list their
Yes.
6-bedroom house.
And that happens.
Okay,
And so when they apply, they provide me their listing websites where their homes are listed. And I also have compliance software. And I check the listing. And if they're advertising for 3 bedrooms and able to host 6 guests, that will show up at the very top of their listing.
okay, so you're still going to go through that and check. So even if we go to general STR, you're going to be checking to see how many bedrooms are advertised.
Yes.
That's your,
Because that's how I determine what to ask them for the fee.
okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
And when they apply, they should be writing down how many bedrooms they are actually intending on renting, and they should be drawing an illustrated picture of the area to be rented. But as you mentioned, what they apply for they could change that in their own freedom and stray away from what they applied for. In which case, yes, we would need to check.
Okay.
But they have to reapply every year. So, I mean, at the worst, we're
Well,
gonna mess out on.
Usually when I catch it is when they submit their taxes. So when I get a tax payment from somebody and it's only multiplied by 1 bedroom, and I'm like, but I remember your application. I'll pull up their application, which says 2 or 3. And then I'll go in their listing and I'll see what are they advertising for. And then I can email them and say, you submitted payment for 1 bedroom, but it's clear that you're actively renting 3 as a short-term rental.
Okay.
So you owe me
Okay.
for 2 more bedrooms.
So that's cool. So as long as you got that check and we feel like that's going to be covered, I feel good on that.
This is a tangent question, but definitely related. How do we feel about our definition of bedroom?
Has to be, I think that's through code.
Well,
That's
right, but
identified through code.
Because I mean, I know this is a thing, like people put a sofa in a, walk-in closet and call it a bedroom
Hmm.
because they can.
They
right,
can list
yeah,
that on
they can list it
Airbnb,
for-
technically.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like, yeah,
So-
you talked about the guy in Old Town. So you live next to him.
There are a few people
Who's
who
got
try to.
flop, he tries.
So when you rent a space that's a living room and you have a sofa bed in it that is able to host 2 people and you're advertising your short-term rental as a 2-bedroom able to host 4 people, but you just refuse to pay taxes for a 2-bedroom that hosts 4, then typically we have a discussion, and if you really refuse to want to pay that, the only way to get around it is to not advertise a sofa bed as a sleeping space and to host 2 extra people. They must remove that as a sleeping area option. And they can only host 2 guests in the 1 sleeping area to reflect the 1 bedroom. So, I mean, yeah.
Right, I want to make sure that what we have in our code.
We have
is-
discussed with the fire department, Nederland Fire Department, with Dan Wester, our safe built building official. and Attorney Madsen about the definition of bedroom, and it's clear from all of our resources that they are in support of our current definition of bedroom and how it is enforced.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure that we were good on that, and that we're not,
We've looked into it recently.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and reached out to all those people about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, like, if people are on septics, you can, go by what their septic is rated for, or if you.
That's
you know,
that's what we do currently.
Right, yeah.
But some of the homes are not on septic.
Right.
And they
That-
have more freedom in terms of
Yeah.
bedroom.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
But-
but yeah, I mean, going by fire occupancy or,
Mhm.
whatever, I mean, obviously like whatever the county assessor's office says you have is.
One of the other clarifying questions I asked was, so it says in the ordinance that Class A short-term rental license for accessory dwelling units detached would not be available after May 7th. The thing I wanted to clarify and make sure was correct. So as general STRs include ADUs, but I just wanted to make sure that the language reflected attached and detached.
Mhm. I believe it does. I will defer to Attorney Madsen, but she and I did go back and forth about this. So I think that it does. But we will absolutely make sure
Okay.
that it does because I want both attached and detached to have the ability to be rented as a short-term rental. They do now. They are just, the Class A is separated into its own license type.
Right.
Right now, I think there's only 3 that hold a Class A, 3 or 4. And somebody would still be able to obtain a short-term rental license for a detached ADU. It just wouldn't be called Class A.
It would be general STR if
Yeah,
we were to
just
go with.
be a short-term
So
rental
yeah,
license.
so just another clarification, general STR includes the detached, attached ADU.
And, and one question here though is, so say somebody has a detached ADU, could they rent out their ADU? And then could they rent out their residential structure at the same time?
So technically, one person, one license type.
But if you only have one license type, I mean, that would be a question as to if that's something you want to talk about, if they can rent out both their residential structure and their ADU. I mean, they could list on their application both structures in their drawing and rent out both.
I know in the past, the board has expressed a desire that they would prefer one of the residences to be a long-term rental, and if it were not occupied by the host, instead of both having short-term rental, but there are a lot of new members on the board, and I would like to hear how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, I would support that. I don't know if there's a way that we can enforce or even, put it in the code, but one listing per license, right? So like if you want to rent your house and your detached ADU together as one rental, that seems more reasonable than saying, oh, I'm going to rent my ADU as one rental and I'm going to rent my house as another
Right.
rental.
It's just like
I'm
more,
getting
it's
two-
just more bedrooms, really.
Yeah, right. So
So I'm
one listing per license.
I'm remembering something in chapter 16 and I just pulled it up. We have an ADU section in the zoning code and it says related to ADU, short-term rental,
Right.
short-term rental of an accessory
Yep.
unit
That's right.
and short-term rental of a principal dwelling unit on a lot with an accessory unit are prohibited.
Yep.
Okay.
Except as specifically authorized in chapter 6. So we could just put something in the short-term rental that you can't rent out both.
Yeah, that was
Unless-
actually recently when we had readjusted for ADUs in the housing code.
Yeah, I mean that seems to like solve a lot of problems anyway, just
Yeah.
to say.
We can always revisit later if it becomes an issue, but so just one or the other. And then my second question, and I know you guys may not have this information, so maybe just even general idea. I had said in the last meeting we had, it was mentioned that there was a single family residence in the industrial zone. One of the folks who was at the meeting had a dwelling in the industrial zone. how many residents in the industrial zone could get a Class C. So in other words, how many family homes, single-family homes or multi-unit dwellings do we have in industrial zone? Do you know off the top of your head? Anybody? Okay.
We could do research and figure that out for you
Okay,
and come back.
cool. There's a reason why I'm bringing that up. And I can bring it up now or later, maybe, because we're still in clarifying questions technically. So what would you like me to do?
I'm guessing you're bringing it up because of our last item.
Just be conscious, isn't there still a subdivision application in that district? And do we need to be?
There is, but it's also an item later.
Yeah, and it's also
In
an item
regards-
later. But how about I'll start and maybe you can tell me to shut up or not, Attorney Madsen. Seems the easiest way. So there's been some land use takeaways and research from the SE group regarding they're doing our comprehensive plan. And they have identified that low density residential land accounts for about 52% of all of our land. So low density residential, single family dwellings. Medium and high density account for 0.5% of our land area. And most parcels in the industrial zoned area contain single family homes. So those are considered legal non-conforming uses, right?
Correct.
However, the SE group states that we need to align existing land uses with current zoning designations to reduce the reliance on legal non-conforming uses and reassess the use of industrial zones to ensure that they are optimally leveraged for light industrial activities. So my point that I want to make here is that we're starting to see some of this research come out of the SE group that suggests, hey, you've made a lot of non-conforming decisions that are impacting the amount of industrial land that you have. And I would like us to reconsider having the industrial zone as a part of Class C, if that were something that we were going to move forward with. Because what I'm afraid of is that we will continue to not make sure that that zone is used appropriately for industrial uses. And that more and more, it's like, well, if I can just throw an STR, but it's like, is that the best use for that zone? And I think that's something that we need to start being really, really conscious about. And that may mean making a couple of folks mad who are in that zone. But at this point, I feel like we have to be a bit protective for some really poor decisions that have happened in the past. And if we're serious about moving forward with our comprehensive plan and attracting new businesses and creating an economic development plan, then I think we need to protect those zones even more so.
And Nicole, can I ask, would you be interested in grandfathering in the one short-term rental located in the industrial zone and allowing that one to continue to operate?
Yes.
I don't know, actually.
Okay.
Why not have it be for an industrial use?
It's a house. I mean,
House is not industrial use, though.
right.
have
I think
so-
I think we need to reconsider the industrial zone. If people are building houses in the industrial zone, it's very likely we might want to change that zoning to high density residential. Like if for instance, what's coming down the agenda, if that gets approved into becoming a housing development, it shouldn't be industrial zoning.
Are we talking about this? Just that we might be crossing.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about it soon, but okay, I am into what you're saying but grandfathering that one person and then getting them out of the whole category.
I mean, all
I
those.
agree.
those
If there's a lot
units
of room for problems.
are already grandfathered in, for lack of a better word. And so you're saying potentially that based on what SE Group's saying and the needs for that we protect that zone for industrial.
Yeah, light industrial. Sorry, Jennifer, were you going to say something?
I wasn't, no.
Okay. Yeah, that it stays protected for light industrial. And so I understand that there is a house or an STR that's on there. This is a little bit where it's like, do we make one exception? I can understand, but at the same time, we have very little of it, and our own consultants are telling us we need to get our shit together.
Can I ask, like, how does that one house affect our industrial zone? Like, I'm just curious how that one might affect our industrial zone.
It's one less. Yeah. I mean, I
What
don't
would
have
you
like an
imagine a
impact study.
use in the industrial zone in that house being like, it's like a candle factory, or I mean, like,
But see, that's the thing is like,
It's-
why not? Why not rent it out as a business, or, you know, why use it as an STR when there are plenty of others that are being used as STRs?
So do you mean he can't choose to move back into his house because it's a single family home and he can't
yeah.
take away a person's home?
I mean, that's fine. That's fine if that's but why use it as an STR?
I feel like we should grandfather it for the same reason we're grandfathering the non-primary resident people. At that point, if we're not grandfathering that, we shouldn't grandfather them. I mean, it just seems like we're only doing it to be nice. But, you know, it's not a transferable license. When they sell the house, it doesn't transfer. So in the end, eventually it'll go back to whatever we want it to be.
So if we decide to grandfather it in, you know, as your question, I could be fine with that. I could get around that, but I would not want industrial as a Class C.
Okay, I'm down with that. I could see a lot of problems if something happened in the future where there were a lot of homes in industrial. And then since they don't count towards the cap, you know, it could be crazy.
Well, in, you know, the industrial zone, no hotels, no motels, no single family dwellings, right? I mean, those things aren't even allowed, period. And to be able to give industrial zone a Class C option, like that's, whoa, like we're going to be doing the same thing that everyone complains about. Our code is so screwed up. We will be introducing one of those screw ups, or, you know, just one of those weird things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm generally all for grandfathering, and I think that that's, you know, probably still the right decision in this one case. But yeah, I'm all STRs in industrial just seems like not like a nonsensical thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if it was high density housing, yeah, like there's some argument it could be made that we have a need for high density housing, but that's not what we're talking about.
But even then, I mean, not to get too far off, but our high density housing or zoning isn't being used for high density zoning. Like we need to get better at making sure that the right use is being administered for the zone. We need to make sure and protect that industrial uses are going into industrial zones.
Yeah, totally agreed.
So that was my thing that I really wanted to point out, and that I'd feel pretty passionate about. So.
Any other clarifying questions before we go to public comment? If not, we're going to public comment.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Tierney.
This might have been addressed in some of your prior meetings, but how did we land on, well, I know that we're thinking about readdressing the cap, but how did we get to 60? Was it based on how many we currently have? Was it looking at other towns? I'm just curious.
It was based on a calculation that was in between 8 and 10% of our current available units for housing stock. So we have currently 720 available housing units. And is that right? I think that's right.
You're right in the percent.
Yeah.
Yes, the percentage we had identified 8 to 10%.
Yeah, 720 housing units. And typically a lot of municipalities do 8 to 10%.
And yes,
Number.
yes, thank you. And then also we are currently sitting at about 52 to 55 licenses. So if we were to end the moratorium, open back up for applications, we wouldn't be starting at like a dead point of a cap. We would be able to accept a few new people who want to apply. And so that was also a reason.
So with that, and thanks for asking that question, Tierney, because if we go to 10%, then we're at 72. So it may not be 60, but if we allow for some of those bedrooms to come in under the general STR, go to 72 at the 10% upper, threshold, then we'd still be within the 8 to 10%.
Plus the Class C ones, which don't count.
Those are, uncapped.
So,
So we don't care.
yeah, so, but I mean, just in terms of like keeping that percentage in mind.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, just basic
and
question.
Does that 52 or 6 or whatever that we have right now include the Class C ones?
Yep.
Okay, so
That's
yeah,
the-
so really there's room for another almost 20 more licenses probably.
And that's quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Currently have 12 Class Cs.
why did we not cap Class C?
Isn't that sort of just capped by geography?
Why,
I don't-
but why
That
not?
was just your recommendation. You didn't want Class C to count towards the cap. Right now, we don't have any type of cap, so nothing has a cap. I believe it was your recommendation that it doesn't count towards the cap.
I think you could use that answer every time and we're just going to be like, yeah, we probably did say that.
And
I think
No, I'm saying you can say it every time.
was
It's totally
to
cool.
cut it away from the cap, to separate it from the cap. I mean, if we wanted to cap Class C licenses, that's kind of a different conversation, but it was mostly taking it out of
The
limiting,
regular cap.
allowing more people to get in the game before we hit the cap, in all the other, in the other zones, in the residential and neighborhood commercial. So
So I guess, is anybody concerned that we don't have a cap on Class C and so we could proliferate, general commercial or CBD area, the short-term
I would
memories?
totally be interested in a cap on Class C,
You would?
strongly.
Okay. Do we have, any other thoughts?
That could get taken
That's
for a
fine.
ride quickly.
Okay. Macy, was there any, if you can't remember and if that was our recommendation, and there probably isn't any past data on putting a cap on Class C. Yeah. Probably not any data or things that you drew up or other municipalities that you talked to.
No, but I think we could probably look at what the housing stock looks like in that area. And
That would be
maybe I
really
can come
helpful.
up with a percentage for her.
That could be
Or
helpful.
maybe a
Like,
cap number based off of percentage
within those two.
within
Yeah.
those two zones.
and how many are existing already? How many do we already have? Right?
How many housing units in those zones or how many licenses?
How many licenses? How many
12.
units?
12.
But we don't know units.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get what I'm going at.
I
Okay.
do. Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling.
We will now go to public comment. Any public comments in the room on STR? Folks online? This is the discussion item, next steps for STR ordinance.
This is Melody Baumhover. Can you hear me?
Yes, Melody. Go ahead.
All right. Nederland resident. I just wanted to comment that I'm in full support of, even though it is more work, getting those LLC owner names on the application somehow. I would almost say that have them submitting their annual report that they submit to the Secretary of State, which you have to list the owners out every year, might be a better route than the initial articles of incorporation. But I know several people that's what they do. They operate 3 or 4 different Airbnbs. And it's it's tough because those are the people who are, not being honest. And so I think that's where, as residents, we start to get frustrated with the Airbnb licenses and the impact on our community because there are people that own more than one. So that's all I wanted to say on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Melody. Any other comments? Any other comments? I'm sorry. Any other comments on the STR ordinance? Okay, hearing none, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and nods, guidance.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Tanya.
I was gonna recap some of the things we talked about.
Do it.
Thank you.
Okay, well, first was to take the P out of commercial. The second was to ask corporations to submit their letters of incorporation and also have a checkbox on the application stating I do not have an interest in any other short-term rental or something. Somebody had said it better. The third was to get rid of industrial from the C category, but to grandfather in the one that we have. And then I'm thinking I'm forgetting a bunch of stuff.
The cap on Class C, do you want to have a cap on?
Oh,
Class
yeah,
C?
maybe we want to get rid of, we want to add,
Maybe
we want to keep the cap. We want to have it count. We want to change our minds. I know we did. There was a reasoning behind it, but
No, I don't think
No.
there was. I think it was really just pulling them out of the cap. I don't think we had logic to not put a cap on it. So just maybe explore data, information, numbers
see
to
how that
decide
looks.
what would make sense.
Okay,
I think that
so-
would blow up and we'd be bumming.
Okay, so then let's keep the cap. Keep them accounting towards the cap. The industrial stays industrial. We leave the grandfathered in. We make corporations submit paperwork, check the box, allow P, take the P out of C. What else was there?
I also had clarified that you cannot have an STR license on an ADU and a primary residence.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah.
For sure. It's one or the other.
I know I'm still not sold on option one.
You like the other one better?
Why?
I
I like
just,
it too, but
yeah, I just need to better understand how option two accomplishes what we want accomplished, which is allowing people to rent a bedroom.
They can.
They can.
Yeah.
Under
So
that,
really
can,
just
but it goes
raising the
towards the
cap
cap.
is the
Yep.
key.
just raising the cap. So
All right.
and so you're there now.
I'm softer on it. I won't say I'm there.
I'm all for simpler application structure and allow us more time to enforce the rules and guidelines that we're trying to manage, like one person per license and stuff like that, that makes, I don't know, more sense than spending a bunch of time trying to manage the different license types.
yeah, I suppose if it becomes an issue where a lot of people are not able to do that because we've reached the cap, we can come back and add it as another category, as another amendment, but
Yeah, we can revisit. I mean, we can start to see, okay, how quickly did we get there? How many people got on the waiting list? How many people are still on the waiting list? What does our long-term rental housing stock look like, at that time? Because that
Yeah.
part of this is to increase that, right? That's the whole point of the cap. So yeah, so I think that would be, something we could always revisit later.
yeah, and then unfortunately, it does give people an area where they can start fudging, when we reach our cap, like, oh, but then there's always the room in your house option. That's, unfortunately, that's human nature, some human nature.
So I'm inclined to go with option one with some of the caveats that we've talked about, right? No industrial zone on option or on Class C. Maybe increasing it to about that 10%, so 72, or I'm willing to do 70 or, just to trial it out. We can at least just start to test it out. How many people do we have currently on the waiting list, by the way?
We don't have any.
We don't have any. Okay. All right, cool. So yeah, so that's what I'm inclined to do or to lean toward.
Do you need any other guidance? And I guess you'll need nods. officially.
It would be helpful to know how the board is feeling about the different options. And Jennifer, you were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say that Mayor Pro Tem Sterling suggested what she was interested in. I think seems like other people are in agreement with that approach. And so if there is a not a for that approach, then we would revise the ordinance and probably bring it back at the next meeting.
To June 18th, I believe.
Do we have nods of four? Okay.
Yeah.
Any,
Uh-huh.
any nods online, Tanya?
Yeah. Wait, are we nodding for all those changes that we said to get put
Yes.
in here?
Yes, and to explicitly code that states not more than one person can own multiple STRs, or however you were saying it, take primary owner out of Class C, question on application about owning more than one STR, submit paperwork about your LLC, cannot have an STR and an ADU and a primary residence as an STR, remove industrial from Class C, consider a Class C cap, and overall increasing the general STR cap to 70, maybe 72.
And
I
did we
iterated it.
say that we'd grandfather in that one guy?
And we can grandfather in that one
And
guy.
then did we say take the P out of C?
Take the P out of the Class C. Yep, primary
okay.
owner out of Class C.
All right.
I
Yes,
went through all
nodding.
of it so you can go back through the recording.
Appreciate that.
No problem.
Thanks.
So we have a nod of four on all of that, everyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate the grandfathering since we are grandfathering the non.
Yeah, I
tenants.
mean, it's not, I don't know the guy, but I would feel bad for grandpa.
I appreciate it as a management of his licensure. He's been a very responsible operator, and I've never had any complaints on his short-term rental. And I have no concerns about grandfathering in that one short-term rental in the industrial zone.
Thank you. With that,
I feel like we're much better
um,
aligned.
yeah. Well, that will move on to the 6.2 amendment to ordinance 856, the housing needs assessment affordability, how affordable housing yard and bulk variances. You want me to go ahead and start reading this or read through this?
You
will.
talking to me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think we need to fill in all our new people who weren't there when we passed all this.
Okay, sounds good. So in late December or in December, we passed ordinance 856. We passed a bunch of ordinances on housing needs assessment, Tierney and Ty. That came out of the housing needs assessment. There was a lot of good recommendations that came from our consultant, and this is one of those. There was like 4 or 5. I can't remember how many there were, but this was one of them. But it was kind of there was a detail in there that kind of went through, and Tanya and I both kind of struggled with it after the fact, and it was kind of a detail that was deep in there, and we overlooked it, but it passed. So we want to bring it back and have the board discuss it more, this particular this particular term. So we passed the ordinance 856, and in ordinance 856, section 16-324. So yeah, Luke, you weren't on board at this point either. Deed restriction requirement. It's called preserving affordable housing stock. C, the third subsection there said deed restrictions shall remain in effect for a minimum period of 20 years. So we would like to discuss increasing that 20-year time period that developers would get to deed restrict the property as affordable in order to be eligible for the yard and bulk variances. It seems this may be too short. This 20-year time period is likely too short to properly protect all stakeholders in such a project. So the whole idea through our code changes was a lot of it was to entice developers and to reduce barriers for affordable housing. And so this particular one said we could tweak yard and bulk variance, yard and bulk restrictions could be tweaked. I can't remember the percentage.
50%.
Up to 50%, but that does not include height.
Right, that for all elements except height.
Setbacks except height.
So
everything,
from the
so
front
people
to the back to the sides.
They could
50%.
build out more, they could build more structure on a piece of property. As long as they deed restrict it for 20 years. So we want you to consider the stakeholders, kind of put out some scenarios here. The developer, builder, owner, the existing neighbors to the affordable housing project, and the tenants of the affordable housing project. So in a relatively short 20 years, which life is fast, folks, the developer builder may have new priorities or needs that may change their outlook on their desire, need, or their ability to keep this property for affordable housing. They may need to convert that housing units on this property to market rate or above market rate to sell or rent for any variety of reasons in their life. The existing neighbors would have had to adjust to the yard and bulk variances granted to the developer builder, which may very well have changed the nature of their neighborhood. Through the development and construction process, the neighbors have accepted these variances are tolerable for the good of the greater community by the addition of affordable housing. Now, a relatively short 20 years later, the developer builder owner has converted these property from affordable to market or above market rates to sell or rent. And the neighbors now see this property really at the same or comparable market rates as their own homes. And yet with these variances, these yard and bulk variances that have altered the nature of their neighborhood for good. So something of a bait and switch, really. The tenants, one example group were young couples who move into affordable housing and a few years later have their first child, a few years later have their second child, a few years later have their third child. In a relatively short 20 years, and they haven't been able to afford buying, the developer builder owner needs to convert these housing units from affordable to market rate or above market rate to sell or rent. And this family finds themselves in need of finding a new place to live with a child in high school, maybe another in middle school, another in elementary school. And another example group are seniors who moved into affordable housing at some point in those 20 years, and all of a sudden are forced to have to find a different place to live. Another example are folks in the workforce the local businesses are counting on for staffing their businesses. These people would also find themselves in the same position of having to find different housing, and it may be more difficult for them to continue to work for their employer, depending on their new housing situations, causing disruptions for these people in the workforce and for their employers and our local businesses. Such scenarios could be at a very vulnerable time in some of these tenants' lives and would likely contribute to a more stressful time for such change for these families, seniors, and people in the workforce. So another perspective, after we had passed this ordinance, it was in January, late January, me and Miranda and I went to the 2024 Regional Housing Partnership Summit at the Boulder Jewish Community Center. And it was a big presentation by people from around the country. And then we broke out into smaller groups, and we were sitting with, people from Lyons and West Boulder, kind of rural areas. And we spent some time in small groups discussing what our kind of more specific and needs are. And when I mentioned our 20-year minimum deed restriction time, Robin DeFalco, who works for DOLA, you could see her expression, her surprise. She raised her eyebrows. And then she spoke of the fact that, 30, 40, and 60 in perpetuity options. She's told us that right now, there's a lot of uncertainty and anxiety about the not too distant future. So coming up within this year and next of many properties in Boulder County that are coming up on their 30-year terms, and the uncertainty of whether they will continue to be affordable housing or whether they'll convert to market rate. As you can imagine, in Boulder County, Boulder County, including here, in 30 years, the prices of things have definitely increased, the value of things. So another point of consideration, just kind of is the usual mortgage period is often 30 years. So in our opinion, Tanya, my opinion, 20 years just seems like a relatively short amount of time. And we believe that the BOT should reconsider this deed restriction to be in perpetuity, personally, is what we think. if a minimum time limit is preferred other than in perpetuity, then we believe it best to increase this deed restriction to a time period of 60, 50, 40, or, worst case, 30. So, and then, December 5th, we approved that ordinance with a 50% variance and deed restricting for 20 years. So our questions before the board, would the BOT direct town staff to research the deed restriction terms of other like communities in Colorado to determine how our 20-year deed restriction minimum time period compares to theirs? Would the board be willing to amend ordinance 856 to increase the amount of time a property needs to be deed restricted? So the first one is more research-based, and the second one is potential steps. And would the board consider a new term of in perpetuity? And if not in perpetuity, then to what a minimum amount of time greater than 20 years would the majority of the board consider? That's our, and then attached is that ordinance from December, and then the actual housing needs assessment PDF. Tanya, anything you want to add?
No, I think you did a great job. Thanks.
I'm all for that, but what's the incentive? I just want to know what the incentive is for people to sign up for this 30-year deed restriction.
What you mean for the developers too?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean
Well,
to go to a
right-
higher?
Right now,
higher
it's
amount?
20 years, and
Right.
they get 50% less yard and bulk restrictions, variances, whatever it's called. Is there anything else on there too?
No, that's it. I mean, it
Is
gives
that
them more
it?
freedom. It gives them more freedom to build something larger, probably.
Sure.
There's probably not a great incentive for them in some ways, but it's more about protecting that resource
No.
for our town.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
for them, 20 years is like, that's my retirement plan. I'm going to bump that up, sell it at a high price, and I'm out.
Right. I mean, sure. I see that, and just like your example said, where people had one child, three children, they're all in different grades, and then all of a sudden they have to move out of their house because that 20 years is up. But to get people, like, I'm all for more time, but I'm just wondering how we get people to sign up for that. Obviously, it's easier to build, but where are those people when they do decide, oh, I'd like to sell my house? Like, where are they at?
Oh, I'm sorry. This would be a developer owner who wants to sell their property, you mean, that they're renting as
Yeah,
affordable
yeah,
housing?
Yeah.
I might be able to provide some clarification if that helps. So, not strict for the 20 years, but the 20 years was originally thought of because we, as a town, we don't have a lot of incentives. We can't really offer,
Sure.
lower PIFs or anything like that. It's not something currently there's interest in. Yeah. There's studies being done.
Sure.
But yeah, there's not a lot of incentives right now. Technically what I do is I try to, get them into companies that do affordable housing to see if there's funding that they can get through like the state. But it's just, we don't have any incentives to offer with the funding that we have
Sure.
in the town.
But-
Doesn't mean it can't happen in the future, but at this time we don't, which is why that original 20 mark was kind of like, does it make sense? Because we don't have anything. But I do think there's value in protecting
Oh, sure.
our spaces.
Absolutely.
So we don't really have incentives.
Sure.
Besides the variance. That's the only thing we could really come up with.
Were there any other of those other ordinances we passed? Were there any others that there was one where if it was like 15%, it could just be administrative and not come to.
Yeah, so
there was some, there was,
15% administrative variance, but not included on height as well.
and then there were what were the other ADU? I'm trying to remember.
Most of it was just allowing housing, like the tiny, so we came up with more housing options, which was like tiny homes and, the quadplexes, just giving more options for them to build in some of these zones. So now there's that flexibility of actually being able to create a higher density with the variance if they can find the lot. I think a lot of people right now we're seeing people are interested in possibly town-owned lots. And so, there's that protection of, they have the negotiating factor of if they make that and they go through the PC and the Board of Trustees and talk to the public, that's really where they can negotiate maybe an incentive that makes sense for the town and themselves. But if they're just going on private land, just that variance is really all they have.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Other clarifying questions? Tierney, any questions?
No questions.
Okay. We'll
Like,
go to,
what would be an example of the yard in bulk for like high density right now? I'm trying to look it up right now.
No problem. I'll pull it up.
Awesome. Just to kind of see what 50% looks like so people can visualize this.
Absolutely. So if you are in high density residential, setbacks for street currently is 20, so you could ask for 10. It would have to be approved. But you could go for 15, 16, like you have wiggle room up to 10 feet. From your front yard setback for all uses, it's 20, you could go to 10. And then for your, let's see, principal uses, there's 5 feet. For accessory uses, there's 5 feet. So principal really would probably be the case here. You could go for 2.5 feet. And again, that's the maximum, is you can go for that 50%. There's no touching on the height itself. Does that help?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, it helps me visualize it.
Absolutely.
So, well, I mean, I'm in favor of changing it from 20 to at least 30. 40 years. Perpetuity may be a harder sell, but I would vote for it. What are you guys thinking across the board?
I'm thinking we're gonna go to public comment before we dig into that too much.
Gotcha. All right, perfect.
So we have no, actually, no, we do have someone here behind the podium. Any public comment from? Any public comment? Got someone in the room or folks online? Person in the room doesn't seem to be wanting to make a comment right now. Anyone online want to make a public comment on this discussion item? If not, we'll bring it back for discussion and some possible some nods, hopeful nods. I think for me, I mean, one thing I would just put out there to y'all, and I can understand, I mean, there's the frustration of we don't have men's incentive. We want people to build here. And it's just, less than a generation away, it could be taken, it could go away. So it's, I would definitely like us to look at the first question before the board, which is researching other towns, like towns, and seeing what kind of, because Boulder County, the city of Boulder, they got the 30-year coming up, and they're kind of freaking out because they could have a lot of people out of a place to live. So to me, really, the step one is kind of getting a better sense of how other people are navigating this. I mean, I love the idea of shooting for in perpetuity on some of these properties, and maybe that's not realistic and we come to a lesser number. But I think gathering more information is something I'm in favor of. What other comments do folks have?
I would agree with that. Sorry to jump in. That kind of researching and seeing what other towns are doing seems like a good place to start. Not only the timeline, but also the incentives that other places are offering as well. I know that we might not be able to do the same thing, but it'd be nice to see that comparison because we want people to build as well. So balancing those factors, I think, would be important.
Do I have 2 more nods on that? Because that would be me.
Nod.
Okay.
Yes, nod.
Okay. Thank you.
Just as a where I'm standing, I would be greatly considering the in perpetuity. This actually came up when we were doing the housing study. One of our committee members had strongly suggested that we consider in perpetuity. And at the time, I think we're like, okay, well, maybe we can consider it, let's start with something. And so perhaps now we're at that point of reflecting. And all of her comments were, spot on. I mean, she oftentimes found herself in a very disenfranchised position. And she just would think that, there are other lots of people out there like me, and to not have to worry about when a term is up would be super helpful. And so I would personally be in favor of in perpetuity.
Awesome.
More comments?
But with that, I do think we need to reassess how we attract the right developers here to do that. The types that we're talking about would be very mission-driven type entities. And I think those are hard to find for a small mountain community, but I think we need to continuously think of these other things and ways that we can attract those type of developers. Besides the 50% variance, yeah, they can build more, so perhaps they can offset their costs with that, but PIF fees, other things, we need to be thinking creatively.
But I think once we get the next, was it Ractolus? Is that what it's called? The rate study?
Yeah.
Then we can
Correct.
come back and talk about lowering PIF fees for affordable housing or small square footage units, which is
Yeah.
what I've been wanting to do soon.
I'm definitely excited, like, for this housing authority is to take off this inner agency, saying it wrong, the housing authority potentially that we put money into, towards a grant to check out the feasibility with Gilpin and Lyons, and trying to entice the county to consider, unincorporated Western Boulder County as well. But I think that would be a force that would be helpful. And I did talk at a couple of the conferences I've been through since I've been mayor, to the folks from Habitat for Humanity. And this is kind of they had some projects up here 20 years ago, 2000, maybe like 2011, maybe earlier. And they really were challenged to so it was Flatirons, I think it's called, Habitat for Humanity, might not be that, but I think it's out of Broomfield maybe. And they were really having a hard time getting volunteers to come up here. And they said Gilpin County has always been I talked to a couple, the big folks that are big with Habitat in the state. Gilpin County's been always kind of a Habitat for Humanity desert, like nothing has happened there. But they feel like this spot, with the right incubators, could be perfect. Western Boulder and Gilpin County could be a perfect place, maybe even Clear Creek County, to start a charter. And everything they do is in perpetuity, if they buy it. But it's they said sometimes starting one is like going through local churches. A lot of them have started with that, where you work through local churches, and then contractors maybe that go to church, different people come together and start. That's how a lot of them have been built around the country. But they were kind of giving me good information. And I'm going back to CML conference here on the 18th, 19th, 20th. So I'll dig into that deeper. But there's a possibility that something like that could be started up here, which that is their mission. In perpetuity.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the path forward. I mean, if you extend the cap or the limit past 30 years, it sort of just becomes, I mean, what developers can invest in something where they can't, raise the market rate after, some lifetime span of things. So, as long as that's the thing we're trying to discourage, you might as well go with in perpetuity. And that puts you in a position of having to find more creative solutions, because most developers are not going to want to go down that route. So creative solutions and stuff like Habitat for Humanity and
I got what I need. Yeah. And there is the reminder that you guys did approve those title searches, and that will be coming before you for the next meeting. So that could be an incentive if there did want to be like affordable development on town-owned land where we really then have the say, the public has the say, the boards have the say, so.
So we're gonna really know what.
And I'm your housing person technically, just so that you know, so.
But we're gonna know which lots are actually.
Yeah, I will be
potentially
giving a full
eligible
rundown
for
of
us to
which
do.
ones are eligible and yeah.
Because
questions and
Tilden
forth.
Park isn't, it turns out, you know.
What?
eligible.
It's not eligible for housing?
There's,
We're still researching.
yeah.
Okay.
So there, yeah,
I
there,
thought-
yeah, that will be discussed at.
That's what put us into
phase.
this title search mode, is that
Yeah.
when we first looked, and I think that's public, it's public now.
618, it'll be in the packet and
Yeah.
yes, public is welcome to
Cool.
view all that.
Okay.
And cool. And yeah, I definitely would love to see it in perpetuity, but I don't know if we need to answer those second questions. You know, we can just keep them as goals or at least points to move towards, but the research, I think, is a good step one. And it's like for the telesearch. Thank you.
Do you have a timeline on when you would like that research to come back to you? I don't know if that,
How about you tell us when you can have it done?
Yeah, I guess you might need to you might need to figure out how long you need. to do
Maybe
it.
just let us know.
I will let you know.
And other business or something next meeting.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. With that, I need to scroll back to page 2 of this agenda, and we are going to go to, I think it's Britt. We're going to go to 19 West First Street Land Use Code Change Amendment Considerations.
All right, this is me again. So, oh, sorry. I was like, wait a second. Okay. So the agenda item being brought forward to you today is 19 West First Street, land use code change considerations. I do have Jesse Sievers online. He and his business partner are interested in purchasing 19 West First Street, which is a property that is burnt down home located in industrial zoning. In August 2023, the home was destroyed by a structural fire. Prior to this fire, the parcel contained a single-family residential home, which was a non-conforming use under use group table 16-32. Even prior to the recent adoption of Ordinance 855, which created a residential use group, single-family residential homes were not permitted in industrial zones. All that was allowed prior to the adoption of Ordinance 855, all that was allowed, was family care and mixed use under special review use. After the adoption of 855, no residential uses were allowed in industrial zoning. Since the original structure was non-conforming use, it stipulates that a non-conforming structure is destroyed or damaged. The restoration of the structure must commence within 6 months after the date of the structure being destroyed and completed within 18 months after the date on which the restoration commenced. Assuming that the damage or destruction was not caused directly or indirectly by the intentional act of the owner of the property or the structure or any agent or representative such as the owner determined by the appropriate governmental agency. The homeowner, Jared Rothel, 30 years old, admitted to playing with a butane lighter that caught clothes on fire in the basement of the residence. Therefore, since it had not been more than 6 months since the structure was destroyed, the owner was at fault. Building in a single-family residential home is no longer permissible. Therefore, all that's eligible to be constructed here is what is allowed in industrial use, which I can go after this aim, if you'd like. Sievers and his business partner are interested in constructing housing at the site to help increase the housing stock in Nederland, which is a priority identified in town's housing needs assessment. Specifically, they would like to construct some form of multifamily housing. Since reconstruction, the single-family housing residential unit is not permissible, nor is the development of any multi-use housing, both below or above 4 units allowed. Sievers and his business partner are requesting an amendment to the code. Possibly amendments could include revision to Nederland Municipal 16-185 to remove or amend the timeline in which a structure has to be rebuilt following destruction or damage and the fault language. which allows for Severs and his business partners to reconstruct the single-family residential structure. Or to amend Netherlands Municipal Code 16-32 to allow residential use groups in industrial zoning. The Planning Commission identified in their work session, May 22nd, 2024, with SE Group regarding the comprehensive plan that prohibiting residential uses in industrial zone under Ordinance 855 was an oversight, and planned to discuss at their June meeting possible recommendations for the Board of Trustees to consider regarding amendments of allowable uses in this zone, just in general uses. It is important to note that the fire department has concerns about the structure from a safety perspective. They would like to see it demolished before anyone gets hurt, and subsequently are in support of necessary code amendments that would help expedite the removal of the structure. That being said, so staff recommendations were, since the PC already has plans to work on recommended changes to the use group table related to industrial zone, it's recommended that the Board of Trustees direct the PC to revisit the residential use group table and assess what type of residential uses could be allowed either use by right or special review use in the industrial zoning. The questions before you are, how do you want to proceed on this matter? Really just looking for either a nod of for, or absolutely not, whatever it might be, some direction on what you would like us to do, whether it be the amendment to the non-conforming lot standards or that timeline. And there were some attachments to this. I do have Jesse Severs online if the board has any questions for him directly. And then I can try to answer any clarifying questions you may have as well.
Thanks. What clarifying questions do we have for Britt or Jesse? I do. So if there's to be an out of four, you need clear directions. So you would want specifically for us to lay out amendments to the use group table or non-conforming lot standards, or to say have the PC work on this or that, or
So it would more so be the PC discuss possible amendments to code on whether maybe we should look at use group table on what's allowed there for residential, or to look at the non-conforming lot standards. They're both in chapter 16.
right. 'Cause
So
that-
if there's another recommendation as well.
So that could
That's
be
an
a,
option.
that could be a and, not a or.
Yeah, and or, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
It seems to me that allowing high density residential under special review is a pretty reasonable thing, even despite, what you're saying, needing to protect our industrial zone. I think high density housing is the only thing that would be worthy of making an exception for. Since it's something we have a real need for.
Any other clarifying questions?
Tierney?
No, no questions. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll go to public comment. There's no public comment from anyone in the room, so anyone online have a public comment on this item? Give it another minute. If not, oh, yep, go ahead.
Hello, you
Go
got me?
ahead. Yes.
Yeah,
sorry.
Travis, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. Travis Brock, I have property owner 75 Wolf Tongue, 2 doors down from this property. And first off, I agree with the fire department. I'd like to see that building gone. Second of all, I would support any kind of special review use for residential, considering if my property, which is a residential property in the zone, were to be destroyed, would I be able to rebuild on it? Is a big question for me.
Hmm.
I certainly wouldn't want to have any further restrictions on my use. However, I know Jesse, and I know the intention of the property and his need for that property, and generally support it as a neighbor.
Thanks, Travis.
I suppose that's all. See, I only used a minute.
Well done. Any other public comments, folks online? Jesse, is there a statement you want to make?
Yeah, I'll comment. Hi, everybody. Um,
I'll give you
so,
more than 3 minutes, given
well,
your
I'll try to
relationship
be
with this
brief anyway.
request.
Possibly, maybe discussion could be appropriate at some point, but I guess I just wanted to say, aside from my the use of my shop and my excavation business headquartered there in the industrial zone, all of the uses there are residential. And there's a lot of vacant land there in the industrial zone that has sat vacant for many, many years. And I feel that if I could come up with and find some opportunity and recruit some possible industrial use there, it's still a, a small lot, and so I'd still need to ask for a variance for the yard and bulk. But I feel that as an investor, it would be in the best interest from a financial point of view to do residential. And also, it seems to me that there's a need for residential, and we have ample vacant raw land for industrial currently, and it has been that for many, many years. So I feel that it's appropriate to allow for residential use in that zone, given that that's currently what it's being used for. And that's about all I have to say about it all for now. And if there's any interest in discussing further, I'm gonna stay on the call and be available for you guys.
Would this be market rate or affordable?
Well, I'd be open to doing affordable. You know, I was initially, when I first was drawn to the lot, I thought if I could do one of each, I thought that would be a great solution, where it could be a duplex, or even if it could work with the lot and make sense from an engineering standpoint, you know, possibly even more than two. It is a small lot, so I don't know if that could be feasible, but I was interested in discussing with Miranda and Britt the possibilities of, you know, as much density there as could make sense for the neighborhood and for the needs of Nederland to, you know, create affordable housing. So I'd be open to doing, you know, a mix if we could do multifamily, and I would certainly consider it if, you know, I think the incentive for the variant, you know, possibly getting in a variance on the yard in bulk for affordable housing would be appealing as a developer investor. But then there's also an interest in getting a return on the investment and then having a market rate opportunity as well. So both options are interesting to me.
Thanks.
Mhm.
More questions? Any more questions for Jesse? Okay. Any other public comments? If not, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board for discussion and.
Excuse me, sorry, Billy, would the board consider, you know, normal conforming use for Mr. Severs for a commercial or industrial use there? Given that it was a residential lot before?
It is a residential lot zone. Industrial.
It's industrial zone.
Yeah. It's an industrial lot with a house on it. Kind of like yours.
Right. So we could do anything else within the normal special use code?
Anything allowed in industrial
use.
zone district?
And to answer your question, because you had asked, oh my goodness, what happens if my house burns down? Again, if you were within the criteria as stated in code, right, the 6 months.
Yeah, so you need to start that process within 6 months and it
Right.
needs to be completed 18 months. And that's 6 months after the initial like destruction date and then 18 months after that established like building permit state.
So to answer your question, as long as you work within those confines, you're perfectly fine to rebuild your house.
Yes, correct.
Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thanks.
Could I ask a clarifying question related to that? And it might be a question for Britt.
Yeah, I'm fine with Jesse. Go for it.
So there was a legal investigation with Boulder County Sheriff's Department with the owner around, whose fault it was. And because of that, and the homeowners were wanting to do some legal work on their own to look after their son, who was the one living in the residence. They didn't want to tear down the house as a result, because there was still some investigation and forensics going on and trying to kind of protect their son in the legal proceedings. So could there be any leeway on that in terms of that 6-month time period? And that was a question that, when I had a meeting with Miranda and Britt, it seemed like, well, I didn't think of that question. And I don't think anybody else did either, but I think that's a question. Could either the BOT grant some leniency on that timeline, or is there some possible consideration that can be made there for the fact that there was a sort of a legal encumbrance on the property that was delaying the demolition and the rebuild effort?
But
So I can't, yeah, I was gonna say, I can't speak to the legality, but I can say based on our code, it's 6 months after destroyed or damaged. And the 18 months, I think since it's in there, we would have to hold strong and the Board of Trustees would have to amend what that language looks like for the non-conforming structures. I don't, if Attorney Madison has any other feedback. That's I'm not sure.
the other thing, I guess looking at the specific code language, but nothing was initiated, correct, in terms of a redevelopment process.
No building permits or demolition permits were.
So even if there wasn't, nothing was initiated, Jesse, from what I understand, not even a demolition permit, even let's say, okay, demolition needs to be, paused because of a legal investigation, totally understood, but nothing was initiated.
I'd like to say that in the aim, that is exactly what the Planning Commission will be reviewing, is revising that timeline if we want to change that. The MC 16185, remove or amend the timeline in which a structure has to be rebuilt. So that is something we could do, but I believe we're kicking it to the Planning Commission for them to discuss it, and we're not. That's just because that's procedure, right?
If there's an interest to amend either one of these, the Planning Commission had brought up the residential just again because it was oversight in that when we did the housing study, and so it was something they thought maybe there needs to be discussion and see if it needs to go back to the board. But there's also, do you guys want town staff to bring that to the PC and start making that discussion on either of these matters, or both, or not at all? Those are
I
all
would
options.
personally be into them discussing both. And I think the first one sounds the easiest for this specific situation, to remove or amend that timeline for this particular case or in general. So, I'm nodding that we could kick this to the Planning Commission to discuss further.
Just to be clear, you are nodding, just because of the way this name is written, that we kick to the Planning Commission specifically that they look at potential amendments to the use group table and the non-conforming lot standards?
I mean, sure, if they're going to be talking about it, I personally think it's just easier right now to change the non-conforming lot standards, maybe. Well, it's been a long time now, so I don't know if we can just do a, like a variance for this particular lot, if they want to just discuss that versus just changing code or what. But yeah, that's fine to discuss, as well as do we want to add residential to industrial? But that seems to go against what we just said with Nicole about preserving industrial. So we're sounding pretty contradictory at this point, but I'm not opposed to them discussing it, right?
Right. Yeah, they can discuss it. Yeah, I mean, and where's it going to stop? So if we allow, I mean, yes, let's go ahead and let them discuss it. But if we allow a multi-unit housing variance here and then in another industrial zone, then we're getting even farther away from what our consultant of the comprehensive plan is instructing us to do. Right.
Yeah,
So
we need housing too. So, and there was a house there already. So,
right. But I think that there's potentially where other places that are already zoned for housing are going to be able to pick up the needs that we have. So that's just something we have to consider. We have to kind of look at all of it. But yeah, I'd be in agreement to kicking it to the PC.
yeah.
For sake of structural and organization wise, is there anything you'd like to maybe pass along to the PC? Because sometimes I see discussion happen and then it comes back and it's maybe doesn't, maybe it's not the same thought process. And so is there maybe any notes that I can pass along? Just asking from staff perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it would be basically what is starting to come out of our comprehensive plan with the SE group. And, it's one of the it was the actual document that was delivered to the Planning Commission at our last meeting from the SE group that articulated that our industrial zone is not aligned with the needs or the use that it's supposed to have. That we have way more single family housing than we should. Or that medium density and high density zoning doesn't reflect medium density, high density use, right? So, and I can copy and paste all of the things that I've been receiving from them, just as speaking points. And the question, going back to the point of, well, those are all vacant lands, nothing's been on them for years. We should just go ahead and fill them up with housing. Again, I worked on the Affordable Housing Committee. I was like strong, huge proponent. I'm saying let's be strategic and logical about where we put things. And probably the reason why industrial has laid vacant is because we haven't also had a viable economic development strategy to attract some of these other businesses. There are no incentives currently. So that's where I would consider that we need to probably put a few cycles around, in addition to looking at where these buildable, like you said, Britt, you're coming to us very soon with all the buildable plots that we have for affordable housing. Maybe it makes sense that we build affordable housing in those areas where it was already zoned or where it's appropriate versus, again, taking another industrial zone away.
But real quick, I mean, they talk about light industrial. Is that something that can be mandated? And how do they even define light versus heavy?
It's in our code.
For you.
This is Tanya. I would like to say, for the sake of this particular development in this house, it should get torn down sooner than later.
Yes.
I would direct them to consider a variance just for this particular lot to allow them to rebuild of something of a similar nature, versus bring it down this rabbit hole of changing the whole zoning and adding use to the use tables and all that and having it take forever. That's personally where I would stand on it, because I don't see why we would keep that standing like that. And we have somebody who wants to build something on it. So I think that's right there is great. So that's kind of my opinion on it. So I just leave it there.
Not
but-
knowing all the complexities.
But it seems, okay, go
Well,
ahead.
just what's involved in actually rezoning that lot? I mean, it's on the edge of the industrial zoned border anyway. It's not like it's in the middle of the industrial zone.
Right. And it's
I, you know, is that even a reasonable thing to do? Just say, let's just rezone that to be whatever's on the other side of the street?
It'll go through a quasi judicial process.
Yeah. I mean, but like, is that a more reasonable path forward than making a special exemption for that lot or redoing the zoning or the use group tables or
maybe that's something the PC should look at.
I mean, I don't think I'm in favor of changing the use group table so that residential of any, even high density is just universally allowed in industrial zones. But so if we're just talking about like making exceptions, certainly places where there is already housing in industrial or houses in industrial zones, I'm just saying, look, I'm in favor of that. There's already a house there. There's several houses there. What's the best path forward to make specific exemptions for those specific lots or to just rezone them so that they can stay the way they are?
What's the matching zone there? Is it commercial, general commercial?
I think it's neighborhood commercial
Yeah.
coming down. I'd have to look, but I'm
Oh,
thinking
coming down the hill.
First
Yeah,
Street.
and then across
it's
the street,
It's RTD across the street, but
It's RTD across the street.
all
of
across
this,
the other street, like on First Street. That street's commercial, I think.
And then, then once you
And
start.
general commercial.
That's
general
correct.
commercial.
And then up the hill where Over the Rainbow is, Aspen Grove is, New Explorers is neighborhood commercial. Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with, I'd be
that's what I
fine with
was
that too.
Yeah, I
Rezoning
mean,
it to fit
I'm
the
basically,
adjacent.
I'm in favor of those, the lots that are in that zone that currently are have houses on them, being able to continue in that way, and it's a lot better for that to be a multi-family house than a single family house. So,
And
I'd
then
like
if that gets rezoned, then the lot next to it could get rezoned.
well, yeah, right. And that's my question. I was like, what's
Yeah.
the better way forward? Like,
And
is
then
to
it
make
just,
a
you
yeah.
could create a, what's that called?
chain of
Yeah, chain of, thank you.
a little chain
Can't
of little
speak.
chain of residentially zoned spots. I mean,
Oh,
or if it's like, I don't know how specifically you can get in the use group table, but if you have something that says if the lot is already non-conforming residential, then it could have medium density housing on it.
it's actually CBD that comes up. Right, the food pantry and all that and CenturyLink, that's all
Oh, yeah, on the
CBD. So that's really, I mean, other than the public across the street at the RTD, everything else around it is either industrial or CBD. So it's not neighborhood commercial. Neighborhood commercials up the street really at New Explorers, but and then and then across the highway. Well, yeah, and then down the Little Caribou Road on both sides of Third there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a weird situation where you have a bunch of houses.
I mean, I'm not crazy about like extending the build out period for the whole district. Maybe to me, it's like if we look at this one property, I mean, I want the PC to look at it, but if they look at this one property and consider, should this one property, given the weird circumstances, be allowed to go past that 180 days, whatever it is, 18, whatever it is. That's one thing, but I think doing that to the whole zone, I don't have any interest in doing that. Like get building within 6 months, or
So you're
on.
you're thinking
Yeah,
more of like
start
mayor.
doing something in 6 months or else bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like I don't think the whole industrial district should get that freedom.
yeah, I feel that. Yeah, the same way. In the same way, it's just like I don't think we should, allow residential in industrial as a blanket change.
Go ahead.
So that's a code change. I mean, how do you do that? How do you draft the code so that one property is different from all the other properties
That is a code
Like,
change. It can't be a
It's a code
variance.
change. It's
What?
not a variance.
Oh.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's because if the
Hmm.
issue is that the property owner caused the damage, they're not gonna get a variance.
Right.
So,
But,
I mean,
but not the next,
rezoning.
but it can't be sold. I mean, you can't, therefore, the next owner can't.
I don't know
So
that
it's
they
just
would want to
unbuildable?
buy it, not knowing that the answer is yes.
Right. I mean, if it's something is deemed unbuildable because of someone making whatever, something happening with one owner, but the next owner is bound to that. That seems interesting.
The idea with non-conforming uses is that you want to get them into conformity as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And so you're not,
She said what she said.
you're not extending it for future property owners. The ability to have a residential structure in an area where residential uses are not permitted. So that's the idea with non-conformities, is you're allowing them to go forward, but if something happens and the use is discontinued for some reason, then
You want it to come back to the original use.
yeah, to the
Okay, so
permitted
industrial.
uses.
Yeah.
So a tiny little industrial lot. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And that kind of coming full circle, right? It's like, where do we need to protect those things and just
Yep.
draw a line in the sand that says, nope, no more going forward.
So I want to spend one more minute on this because I want to give time for public comments and we want to be done by 10. So what are we going to direct the PC to do? Are we directing them to consider this non-conforming or just a use group table or neither?
I think it's be a super healthy conversation for the PC to
Yes, I-
have because we can hopefully come to these conclusions and be on the same page about how we want to move forward with our land use. And I would really highly recommend that we have the SE group as a part of, if possible at all, or like align it with the same meeting that they're going to be at.
It
Nicole-
is.
and Nicole is the liaison.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. So it would happen at the next meeting, which is when SC Group would be giving their comprehensive
Perfect, because we need their insight in order, I think, to have this conversation and to make those decisions and to decide what we want to be when we grow up. So,
Okay. Do I have a not a 4? Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And with that, I will just say, is there any public comment on non-agenda items? I'm going to make one real fast. The town cleanup day was amazing and a lot of fun and great turnout and just well organized and went well. And
Wasn't fun at the end of the day.
it was fun at the
Yeah,
end of the
no,
day. It's even
felt
funner because
hectic for me.
at the end of the day, there was a great music event. I want to thank the DDA and the parks and everyone for a great music event at Chipeta Park, which is a great venue where the kids can really play and families had a great time and good day for the town on all fronts. And people were really happy that I talked to it with both the cleanup day and with the music. And,
I didn't mean to sound negative. It was just when I was
that's right.
working the dump, it got a
Nikki.
little crazy.
Cool.
Nikki,
We
how
have
was
so-
the park after that? Did you feel good about it?
Honestly, I have been running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I'd have to ask my guys how the park looks.
Hey,
We
Yeah, I'd
got
love some feedback
major
because-
vandalism.
What's that?
Chipeta got hit with major
Really?
vandalism.
after the event,
After it wasn't, I doubt, because of the concert series. It was after the event, but very
like what kind of vandalism?
graffiti on the boulders and on the trash can. And I called the sheriff today about it and sent him the pictures. So bummer.
That's a bummer because it was such a cool event.
Yeah, I don't.
And I still think that
I don't think
venue
it was
needs
the
to be,
concert series at all. I think this was kids.
yeah, and that venue still needs.
But thanks for your comments
looked
on
at.
town cleanup. I thought it was a fun day and
yeah.
Cool. I'm going to move on and give you 3 minutes. to
It
give
may
a-
take a little longer than 3 minutes.
We
but I
have
think
you get 3 minutes and we're over at 10.
But this is going to, I think, be a legal issue and I need to explain it because,
Okay,
all right.
we
So
can,
I'm Elizabeth Gerton, 65 Rickery Circle. I thank the board for allowing me to speak to them. I sent you a letter stating my concerns about two projects, the pickleball courts at the rink and the building of a second trail from the elementary school to the rink. I don't intend to repeat what I've said in my letter. I hope you will take the time to read it and really consider it and try to really hear what that concern is. But I will tell you that when I read the article and learned for the first time through the Mountaineer that ProSab had approved and assigned a contract to and provided money to someone to build a second trail through the green space behind my home, that is town-owned green space, it has turned my life upside down since then. I want to talk about that. I bought my lot directly from the town of Nederland. They were the sellers, I was the buyer. I paid the town at that time an additional $30,000 for my lot over the cost of lots that were the same size, that were right across the street, the same, that were forested like mine, and that for that $30,000, and I met with the mayor at that time, and this is not just, I want to explain, I actually can document what I'm telling you. I've been looking through I haven't had time, I've got so much documentation on this stuff, but I can document what I'm telling you happened and what this is about. And this directly impacts that decision because when I met with the mayor and you had a plat map with numbers for the different lots and then purchase price. And all of the lots except one at that time were available. That had been sold to Randy and Laura Ferris, who were my neighbors because that lot is directly next to my lot. And I asked the town, the mayor, why the $30,000 difference in this lot, same size, would it, and I was told, and this is not just something I remember, this is something I can document, that the lot that I had chosen was more valuable because the land behind the lot was town-owned green space, which the town would ensure it remained undisturbed, that no structures, no trails, fences, anything would ever be built on that land, that this provided more privacy, ensured a quiet lot, and that the view would be the same from the day I saw it if I was there for 50 years.
so
Now,
we definitely want to, we're
So-
gonna, the meeting's ending now, but like, I'll come talk to you for a bit now, but I don't know what next steps will be. This is a public
It's,
comment.
it's
We
state
read your
statute. We have to end the meeting.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think the board needs to understand, the town needs to understand that essentially I paid the town $30,000
Okay.
based on the commitment from the town that they would not do any of this that they're now about to do. And I'm trying to say to the town that because this is, the urgency here is in fact, there are already flags.
I'm going to have to stop.
Space.
I'm gonna have to
So
stop.
if that happens,
I'm sorry,
you
but
violated,
state
you have
statute.
acted, you have acted in bad faith.
This will not be solved tonight.
No,
To you.
but
Okay.
Go ahead.
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Second.
This is typical.
All right,
If that
so
goes
Mayor
forward,
Billy,
if even,
Go ahead.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yeah.
Trustee Ty,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling.
okay.
She's
That not
unable to
available.
vote, and Trustee Maris, please.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This meeting is adjourned at